My husband, whose attitude often veered into misogyny, constantly belittled me as a stay-at-home wife. Every time I attempted to assert myself, he would threaten me with divorce. "Challenge me, and we'll get a divorce," he'd warn. Then, one day, I uncovered a secret of his. From that moment on, my respect for him vanished, and I knew it was time for a change. I was done being the submissive wife he could scorn. Armed with the divorce papers he'd prepared, I set my plan into motion. My name is Megan. After losing my father in high school, it was just my mother and me. Thanks to the inheritance he left, I was able to attend an IT vocational school and find a place in the workforce. I was finally starting to give back to my mother. But just as I was finding my footing, she passed away from a sudden heart attack. Feeling completely alone, my savior appeared, my current husband, Scott. After I started at my new job, Scott took it upon himself to mentor me, guiding me through the complexities of the corporate world. He was a pillar of support when my mother passed away, showing genuine concern for my well-being and encouraging me to lean on him more. From that point on, I relied on Scott not just for career advice but for personal support as well. Scott was a constant presence in my life, always leading and reassuring. "Megan, you really can't imagine life without me, can you?" he would often tease. When we began dating officially, he proposed with a promise. "From now on, I'll protect you for the rest of our lives. Let's get married." Following Scott's suggestion, I left my job after our marriage to become a full-time housewife. My new role was to create a comforting home so Scott could focus on his work without distractions. However, living up to Scott's high expectations proved challenging, and I struggled to meet his standards and manage the household chores. "Hey Megan, what did you do all day?" my husband would ask, his tone often tinged with frustration. "I cleaned the room, did the laundry, aired out the comforter, and went shopping for dinner. I also spent time making beef stew." "How is it?" I asked softly. "It's fine, but did you really clean properly?" "Why do you ask?" "There's dust on this shelf." "Oh, I must have missed that. I'll make sure to pay closer attention next time." "If you're home all day, you should make sure the housework is done right." I'm sorry." Scott continued to impose a superior-inferior dynamic in our marriage, just as he did at work. One day, he commented, "What's with this meat and potato stew? Is it not to your liking?" I asked, concerned. "Why is there pork in it? It's supposed to be beef." "In my family, we always use pork for this dish." "That's probably because your family couldn't afford beef," he said dismissively. "Are you implying that my salary isn't sufficient?" "That's not what I meant at all," I replied, trying to explain. Scott would harshly reprimand me whenever things didn't go his way, frequently belittling me for being the child of a single-parent family and lacking common sense. He began spending his weekends away from home. One day, I asked, "Hey, Scott, where do you go every weekend?" His demeanor darkened. "Why do I need to explain my plans to you? It's not about reporting. I'd just like us to spend more time together on weekends. You have the whole week to relax at home while I'm at work. Let me enjoy my days off the way I choose. I'm not asking you to take me out. I just want us to have some quiet time together." "That's exactly what I can't stand," Scott muttered as he stormed off to the bedroom. "I married a woman with no special talents and let her be a housewife. All you need to do is stay quiet and handle the chores." The next day, he handed me a piece of paper. It was a divorce notice with his name already filled in. "What's this?" I asked, shocked and confused. "You don't even know what this is. I guess single mothers don't teach their kids the basics," he replied dismissively. "Scott, are you saying you want a divorce?" "This is a warning," he said coldly. "It's because of that disrespectful comment you made yesterday. If you ever speak to me like that again, I'll divorce you immediately." "But why?" I asked, bewildered. When Scott made that comment, I was left speechless. With no family to turn to, I had nowhere else to go. Since then, I had no choice but to quietly watch him leave every weekend. One day, while cleaning the house as usual, I noticed his computer was still on. As I moved to turn it off, I glimpsed the screen and saw a hotel resort homepage. Could this be a couple's trip? I thought, a flicker of hope brightening my mood. Maybe, despite his harshness, Scott still cared about me. From that day on, I put extra effort into my housework, eagerly waiting for Scott to mention the trip. However, despite my anticipation, he never brought it up. Curiosity got the better of me, and I began checking the computer more frequently. The browsing history revealed that Scott was still searching for hotels. I started to wonder if he was actually planning the getaway for us. One day, while checking the computer again, I saw a reservation confirmation for a hotel on a booking site. The reservation was for the upcoming weekend. It seemed he had finally picked a hotel for us. Eagerly anticipating an invitation, I waited for Scott to mention the trip. By Friday, my patience wore thin, and I asked, "Scott, don't you have something to tell me?" He looked at me, a bit taken aback. "What are you talking about?" I hesitated to press him further about the trip. His mood soured, and he went to bed early. The next morning, I found him already dressed and ready. "Good morning, Scott. Why are you dressed up so early?" "Oh, it's nothing. I'll be leaving once I'm ready. I won't be home today," Scott said curtly before quickly preparing himself and heading out the door. What was going on? Had he changed the reservation? I checked the booking details and saw that the name in the companion section was no longer mine but another woman's. Companion, Lily, 25 years old. In that moment, everything became clear. Scott wasn't planning a trip for us. He was planning the getaway with a young woman named Lily. All my feelings of love, gratitude, and respect for Scott dissolved instantly. Acting swiftly, I decided to verify his affair. I went to the hotel where Scott had made the reservation. When I arrived, I saw him and Lily cheerfully entering the hotel. I made sure to take photos as evidence, firmly imprinting the scene in my mind. When I returned home, I thoroughly examined our computer. After some searching, I found text messages between Scott and Lily, along with photos of them together. Now I had the evidence to confront him. I decided to wait until he came back from his trip. Until then, I spent the day wandering aimlessly and later enjoyed the solitude of my empty house. Scott's usual scolding for my laziness seemed like a distant memory. The following day, I skipped housework, ordered takeout, and spent the day however I pleased. On Sunday night, Scott finally came home. "Welcome back. You're late, aren't you?" I greeted him from the sofa. His eyes widened at the sight of me lounging there. "What's going on?" he asked, bewildered. "What do you mean, what's going on? Why are you surprised to see me still on the sofa?" When I didn't greet him at the door, Scott's anger flared. His eyes fell on the delivery bag on the table, and his frustration grew. "Hey, what's this? Living it up while I'm away?" he demanded. I sighed and replied, "And where were you staying this weekend, Scott? Were you having a good time? If you knew, you wouldn't be acting like this. Sounds like you want to see it again," Scott said, rummaging through a drawer. "Wait, it's not here." His anger erupted. "Where did you hide the divorce papers?" "They're gone." "What?" I asked, confused. Scott's frustration nearly boiled over at my response, but then he let out a sarcastic laugh. "So, that's it," he sneered. "You threw away the divorce papers because you don't actually want to divorce me, thinking I wouldn't leave you. You're truly clueless. It's a shame your mother didn't raise you better." "I don't understand what you're talking about," I said, bewildered. "So you're playing dumb now, huh? Fine, I can get more divorce papers from City Hall anytime. I'll just go get some right now." "I didn't say I threw them away," I replied. "Then where are they?" "They're not here because I've already submitted them," I said calmly. "What? Didn't you hear me? I signed those divorce papers and submitted them to City Hall yesterday." "Wait, you submitted the divorce papers? Do you even know what that means?" Scott asked, bewildered. "Of course I do," I replied. "Submitting the divorce papers means the divorce is finalized." "Are you saying you didn't know that, Scott?" Scott's face turned beet red at my mockery. "Don't mess with me. You lived comfortably on my salary." "Comfortable?" I shot back. "Where's the comfort in a marriage with someone who constantly belittles and ridicules me and never shows any appreciation for all the housework I do?" "Belittle you?" "Absolutely. As a housewife, you're clearly beneath me, the breadwinner. If you're going to act like this, I'm done. Go be on your own and see how foolish you've been. Get out right now." Scott erupted in anger, kicking me out and shouting. Anticipating this, I had already packed my bags. It was the right call. I grabbed my suitcase and left the house with a sense of pride. On impulse, I rented a weekly apartment and spent the night there. The next morning, I noticed an overwhelming number of missed calls from Scott. Just then, he called again. "Oh, what's up?" I answered. "Don't what's up me. Where are you?" "It's none of your business. We're not married anymore. Stop fooling around. The divorce papers you submitted aren't invalid." "But you signed them yourself," I pointed out. "I wasn't serious. You probably acted out of confusion too, didn't you?" After a night's rest, you should be more clear-headed. If you apologize, I'll forgive you. Just come back. I don't think I have anything to apologize for. How dare you test me, your husband? I supported you all this time. If I leave you, you'll be alone again. Is that what you want? I realized something. It's better to be alone than to be with someone who doesn't care about me. I could sense Scott's fury seething on the other end of the phone. Scott's voice thundered through the phone. What? I've made compromises. Fine. I don't care about you anymore. You'll regret this. I'm pretty sure you'll be the one to regret it. You can't do anything. You're just a loser. With that, Scott slammed the phone down in a fit of rage. I used to be terrified of his outbursts, but now I felt a deep sense of contentment. He didn't reach out for several days. Then, a week later, I received a call from him on my cell phone. Megan, what is this bill? After confirming Scott's affair, I had asked my lawyer to file for damages. It seems he had finally received the bill. Oh, did it arrive? The details are all clearly listed on it, I replied. Why should I pay damages? You're the one who walked out. I even offered to work things out, but you stubbornly refused to come back, Scott argued. Actually, you're misunderstanding. The damages are for your affair, I clarified. My affair? With whom and when? Scott demanded. With Lily, 25 years old. You've been seeing her for a year, I said calmly. How do you know? You left plenty of evidence on your computer. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Did you really believe I was that naive? Scott seemed to doubt my claims. Angrily, he retorted, Evidence? You're lying. There was nothing like that on the computer. Yes, that's right. I knew you weren't stupid enough to leave texts and photos with your mistress on your computer. You can't fool me, I said confidently. Why don't you see for yourself whether I'm bluffing or not? I challenged. I sent Scott the evidence of his affair. His voice immediately turned frantic upon seeing it. How did you get this? I thought I deleted everything. It's true that all the data had been deleted from the computer, but Scott overlooked the fact that I had a certification in IT from vocational school. After some effort, I managed to restore the deleted files and save them. Realizing he couldn't escape the truth, Scott's attitude shifted abruptly. Look, Megan, you don't really want to do this, do you? Yes, I had an affair with her, but it was just a fling. You're the one I truly love. You can't live without me, can you? Scott pleaded. I realized then that this was just his manipulation. Being with you only eroded my self-confidence. Instead of feeling protected, you were destroying my self-esteem. You're just playing the victim, Scott snapped. Without my salary, you wouldn't be able to survive. Sure, you get some harsh words now and then, but that's reality. I can't bear the thought of you, who betrayed me, enjoying yourself while I suffer. I'm holding you accountable for what you've done. That's what the damages are for. Scott finally recognized my resolve and reverted to his usual verbal abuse. Fine, I'll pay. I didn't realize you were such a spiteful person. I felt sorry for you being alone, so I got involved with you, but it was a huge mistake, Scott said, his voice dripping with disdain. Same to you, I retorted. You picked me because you thought you could control me. I should have seen that from the start. You're probably with your mistress, Lily, because she's young and obedient. Pay the damages and go be with her. You'll soon realize that you're destined for a lonely life. Despite his bravado, Scott transferred the agreed-upon amount of compensation to me as required by my lawyer. A few days later, he contacted me again. Megan, could you return some of the money to me? What? I exclaimed, unable to keep my voice down. I've never heard of returning a compensation fee. Besides, after paying the damages and dividing our property, you should still have plenty of savings left, right? Well, that's the problem. My savings are running low. I swallowed my pride to ask you for help, Scott admitted. It turned out that Scott, having invited Lily to live with him, had given her his credit card for emergencies. However, she had started spending recklessly, depleting nearly all his savings. Desperate, he was now turning to me for assistance. Frustrated, I responded, I may have been foolish not to see through you before marrying, but you're just as naive for not noticing your mistress's spending habits until it was too late. I realize now that you're the only one for me, Megan. You must feel lonely being single too, right? Seriously, will you ever grow up? Do you think I'll be single forever? I asked, exasperated. Don't tell me you've found someone else, Scott said, his voice tinged with concern. No, I haven't. And please stop comparing yourself to others. I replied. Well then, what is it? You don't have family anymore, right? He pressed. With the money my parents left me, I've started a new business. I'm surrounded by great colleagues, and I barely have time to feel lonely, I said confidently. You with no special skills starting a business. Scott scoffed. Are you still insisting on that? Can't you just admit that your negative attitude affects everyone around you? I countered. Me ruining? Scott's voice trailed off, incredulous. You belittle others until they lose their confidence and spoil your mistress until she gets out of hand. Unless you change your selfish ways, neither you nor anyone around you will ever find happiness, I told Scott firmly, rejecting him once and for all. After that, he never reached out again. It seems he realized that he could no longer look down on me now that I was successfully running my own business. Rumor has it that Lily dumped Scott immediately after draining all his savings. With his tendency to either belittle or indulge others without forming genuine connections, Scott will likely struggle to find a lasting partner. If anyone is destined for a lonely life, it's Scott, not me. With that in mind, I dedicated myself to my work once more.
On the day my mom passed away, my sister-in-law made a hurtful joke, saying I slept in and missed the funeral. She then mentioned she wouldn't be attending. It made me angry because she had convinced my sick mom to spend a lot of money on a new house, and now she was acting this way. Trying to keep calm, I warned her she'd regret it, but she just hung up. Later, at the funeral, even my usually gentle brother was furious with her. My name's Lisa. I'm 28, single, and have a good job that keeps me busy. Despite everything, I'm doing okay. Today is a day off from work, so I went back to my mom's place after a long time. I greeted her, and we had a nice chat over tea. My mom is a kind and elegant person, but she's been living alone since my dad passed away a few years ago. Both Dad and I always worried about her health because she's not very strong. Whenever I have time off, I make sure to visit Mom and spend time with her. During our chat, I asked if anything troublesome had happened lately. Just as she was about to tell me, the doorbell rang. Mom said it might be Stephanie. Stephanie is my brother's wife. They recently got married, and she's my sister-in-law. I often wonder how my quiet brother ended up with someone as talkative and pretty as her. Although I sometimes find her unexpected visits a bit annoying, I appreciate her caring about our mom. When Stephanie came in, she greeted us cheerfully. She mentioned how long it had been since we last met and then started talking about my job in accounting. She said she's too busy with housework and hinted that it would be nice if I got married soon too. Yeah, maybe my sister-in-law acts timid around my mom, but sometimes she makes these sneaky comments to me. I'm not sure if she's trying to be mean, but it definitely makes me feel uneasy. Looks like my sister-in-law's here too, so I'll head out, I told Mom when I said goodbye. She agreed and said we should catch up more next time before seeing me off. As I left, I couldn't help but wonder if Mom was really okay with my sister-in-law. She's not one to gossip or complain, so I worry she might be keeping her feelings inside. A few months later, Mom told me that my brother was building a fancy new house. My brother makes a good living, but he's not super rich, right? And my sister-in-law doesn't work. So how are they affording such a big house? I wondered aloud. Well, I actually helped him out with some money from your father's inheritance. Mom confessed. How much? I asked. Around $20,000, Mom replied. $20K. Mom, are you serious? I exclaimed in shock. My dad always taught my brother and me to be self-sufficient once we grew up, so I couldn't understand why Mom would give away such a large amount of money. Stephanie, your sister-in-law, kept coming over almost every week, asking for help. I just couldn't say no, especially since Andrew and Stephanie promised to take care of me when we all lived together. I felt like I had to help, Mom explained. Well, if you're sure about it, Mom. But aren't you worried you're giving too much? I asked. No, not at all. This will make things easier for you, Lisa. I'm actually excited about our new life together, Mom replied with a smile. They went ahead and built their house, and my brother, his wife, and Mom moved in together. When I visited to give them a housewarming gift, I was amazed by their luxurious house. It had a modern kitchen and bathroom, fancy interior with real wood, and a big backyard. There was no way my brother could afford all of this on his own. My sister-in-law proudly gave me a tour of the house, and when it was over, I pulled my brother aside quietly. "Congratulations on the new house, Andrew. Please make sure to take good care of Mom." "Thank you, Lisa. Don't worry, Stephanie will take care of Mom while I'm at work," he assured me. I felt guilty about Mom contributing money, but we're determined to ensure she's even happier from now on. It seems my brother wasn't aware that his wife had been asking Mom for money for the new house. He's a good and kind person, but sometimes he can be a bit clueless. "Okay, just make sure you both take care of Mom. And you, focus on your job," I advised. "Let's not talk about work." "Oh, sorry, my bad," he replied. After our conversation, I gave my brother an envelope with some cash and a standing clock. "This clock can help monitor health, so please put it somewhere in the living room where Mom can see it easily." "Wow, this clock is really advanced, huh? But it could be helpful for Mom. And it looks stylish too. Let's place it here," my brother said, setting the clock on a shelf in the living room. "I should head home now." "Take care," I said. My sister-in-law was busy on the phone in another room, so I left the impressive house with my mom and brother seeing me off. 6 months had passed, and it seemed like my mom, who had been a worry, was doing well with my brother and his wife. I was able to focus on my work, thinking that these peaceful days would continue, until I received the heartbreaking news of my mom's passing. When my brother came back from work, he found our mother had stopped breathing. It appeared she had passed away alone in her room. The doctors at the hospital said her existing heart condition, worsened by stress, was likely the cause of death. "Mom, why now? I wish I had come home sooner. I'm so sorry." My brother and I held onto our now lifeless mother, tears streaming down our faces. My sister-in-law, Stephanie, was not there at the time. "Brother, wasn't Stephanie supposed to be home?" "And what do they mean by overwork?" I asked, feeling puzzled. "No, she wasn't home. And about the overwork, I'm not sure. Stephanie took care of all the household chores, so it doesn't make sense," my brother replied, sounding confused. Feeling uneasy, I said, "Well, first things first, we need to arrange Mom's wake and funeral. You'll probably need to take the lead as the chief mourner, Andrew." "You're right, Lisa. Can you help me?" my brother asked. So my brother and I started working hard to prepare for the memorial service. It was chaotic, trying to organize everything for my mother's funeral, finding a place, making plans, reaching out to people, and more. Somehow, we managed to get through the wake, and the next day was the funeral. While my brother and I were busy with visitors, my sister-in-law just sat around doing nothing. Stephanie didn't lend a hand or show any emotion. Despite feeling increasingly frustrated with her, the hustle and bustle of the moment kept me from confronting her. "Andrew, tomorrow's the funeral, and you'll be quite occupied as the chief mourner. Why don't you and Stephanie go home for a bit? I'll stay here," I suggested. "Yeah, I appreciate that, Lisa. Thank you," my brother replied. After they left, I got my work laptop out in the now empty room and started working. I barely slept throughout the night. The next morning on the day of the funeral, even though it was scheduled to start at 10 a.m., I met up with my brother at 6 a.m. to get ready. We were swamped with preparations, going over the eulogy my brother had written as the chief mourner, meeting with the funeral director, and more. My brother mentioned that Stephanie would join us later for the actual funeral. And then, around 9:30 a.m., I got a call from Stephanie. "Hello, Lisa. I'm calling because Andrew isn't answering his phone." "Okay, and, I just woke up, overslept. I won't be able to make it to the funeral." Struggling to keep my voice steady and not let my anger show, I replied, "Okay, but you might regret missing it, you know." "Stephanie, I don't think that's a good decision. Anyway, I understand you're busy, but try to hang in there," I said before Stephanie hung up. "Hey, was that Stephanie just now?" my brother approached and asked. Yeah, she overslept and said she's not coming today, I replied. What? That's unbelievable. It's our mother's funeral, my brother exclaimed. Let's just focus on the funeral, Andrew. I'll talk to you about something afterward, I said, trying to keep things calm. Somehow, we made it through the funeral together. My brother and I paid our respects to our mother's remains, but Stephanie was still nowhere to be found. What was she thinking, not showing up for her own mother-in-law's funeral? By the way, Lisa, what did you want to show me? My brother asked, trying to shift focus. Sure, Andrew. Take a look at this, I said, pulling out my laptop. What is Displayed on the screen was the living room of my brother's house. It dawned on my brother that the clock I had given him as a gift had a hidden camera installed, meant for keeping an eye on elderly folks or pets. I had given it out of concern for Mom, but since she seemed fine, I didn't want to invade anyone's privacy, so I hadn't looked at it until now. However, yesterday, I decided to check the footage from the past week. Here it is, I said, opening a few videos. My brother watched them closely, holding his breath. What the footage showed was heartbreaking. My sister-in-law was exploiting our mother, harshly assigning all the household chores and tasks to her, from cooking to laundry to cleaning. My frail mother was being forced to work to exhaustion. While Mom was busy with the housework, Stephanie would slack off and go out. In the footage, you could occasionally see Mom clutching her chest in discomfort and hesitating to call someone on her phone, only to decide against it. Mom couldn't tell us about the mistreatment she was enduring from Stephanie. She always wanted our happiness, you know, Mom. I had no idea. Please forgive me, both my brother and I sobbed. The pain of seeing our mother in such a situation was almost unbearable. Lisa, can we see the footage from the day Mom passed away? My brother asked me. I haven't checked it, but Mom passed away in her own room, so I don't think we have any recording of her, I replied, setting the recorded footage to the date our mother passed away. After finishing her morning chores, my mother was seen clutching her chest as she headed towards her room. They said she passed away around 2 p.m. The living room was empty for a while. But as we fast-forwarded the recording, Andrew spoke up, "Hey here, stop it and turn up the volume." Around noon, my sister-in-law appeared on the camera. When we turned up the volume, we could hear her voice. "Hey, mother-in-law, mother-in-law," my sister-in-law called out towards my mother's room. But when there was no response, she seemed to assume my mother wasn't there. She then sat down on the sofa and made a phone call. "Hello, thanks for being with me just now. It seems like the old lady is out and about, leaving the house chores half done. Wonder what she's up to." It sounded like she was talking to someone she had been with since morning. Hearing the harsh conversation, I couldn't help but grimace. My sister-in-law continued, "What, she's dead? That would be something, but then again, I could skip the funeral and maybe go on a trip with Daniel. I mean, opportunities like these don't come around very often." My brother and I stared in disbelief. The person on the other end of the line was my sister-in-law's lover. Wouldn't it be nice if that really happened? Then I could make up some story about domestic abuse for my husband, get a big divorce settlement, and buy this house. Then Daniel and I can live here together. My sister-in-law continued her conversation. "So, where do you want to go if we take that trip?" I'm thinking. My brother abruptly interrupted. He stopped the video, his expression changing from his usual kind and gentle demeanor to one filled with anger. "Lisa, I need your help. We're going to confront her." I nodded in agreement with my brother's words and immediately made a phone call. The next day, my brother called while I was at home. "Lisa, she's back. Can you come over?" he asked urgently. "Of course, I'm on my way," I replied, rushing over to my brother's house. As I arrived, my sister-in-law came out to greet me with a forced smile. "Well, hello there, Lisa. What brings you here on such short notice? You really should have let me know you were coming," she said, looking slightly annoyed. "Andrew called me here." "Please come this way," my brother interjected, leading us inside the house filled with the scent of incense. We all sat down at the dining table. "What's going on, you two?" It sounds serious, I said. I do feel bad about missing the funeral. I addressed my sister-in-law, Stephanie, in my usual tone. But ever since you moved in, you've been treating our mother like a servant, haven't you? And even though she was sick, you made her pay $20,000 for the new house. Huh. What are you talking about? I did all the housework. Are you trying to start a fight? Stephanie retorted defensively. Actually, everything has been recorded. I'm not actually an accountant. I'm a private investigator, I revealed. My brother was the only one who knew. I pointed to the surveillance camera embedded in the living room clock and showed her my phone. The video of my mother doing housework under my sister-in-law's command was on the screen. What? This is a violation of my privacy. What were you thinking? Delete it now. Stephanie raised her voice, clearly alarmed. I installed it. As the owner of this house, I have the right to do so. It's not a violation of privacy, my brother calmly responded. What's going on with you two? And what do you mean by private investigator? Stephanie froze, realizing something was amiss. My brother silently got on his phone, and the audio of Stephanie's phone call began to play. I might just skip the funeral and go on a trip with Daniel, and maybe make up a story about domestic abuse from my husband for a big divorce settlement. As the recording played, Stephanie's face went pale. Now this isn't what it seems. Please, hear me out, she pleaded. What's the difference? Tell me, my brother demanded. Caught off guard, Stephanie began to make awkward excuses. Well, he's just a friend. We were joking around. I didn't cheat. There's no evidence, right? But there is, I said, spreading out several pictures on the table. Images of Stephanie coming out from a nearby resort with a man, being intimate in their car, and even entering a hotel on their way back, clear evidence of cheating. What? What's this? How did you get these? Stephanie's voice trembled. You mentioned it over the phone, didn't you? You talked about where you wanted to go on your trip and how you planned to spend the night together with him. I had someone from our company take these photos, my brother explained. How could you do such a thing during our mother's funeral? I calmly spoke. Oh, enough. What's wrong with you all? Stephanie burst out. There's no way we can stay married after this, Stephanie. We're getting a divorce, my brother declared. But I'm going to demand plenty of alimony, and you're going to have to move out of this house, Stephanie countered. Excuse me? My brother and I exchanged a glance, stunned by her audacity. I mean, when people get divorced, the wife receives alimony, right? Now, hurry up and give me my money, Stephanie demanded. Actually, that's not true. Since you cheated, you're the guilty party, and you're the one who will have to pay compensation to my brother, I intervened. What? Clearly, you're even more foolish than I thought. Pitiful, just as Lisa said. I'm going to demand alimony from you and from your lover as well, my brother added. What? And besides, it's for me to tell you to leave. Don't ever come back, Stephanie retorted, growing more agitated. No, this must be a lie. Stephanie muttered as I handed her a return suitcase and escorted her to the entrance. After closing the door, I gently patted my downcast brother's shoulder. 6 months later, my brother's divorce from Stephanie was finalized. She tried to take it to mediation, but the evidence my brother had gathered made it clear to the mediators who the guilty party was. It turned out that Stephanie had been squandering the money from their joint bank account. So my brother was able to divorce her with almost no division of assets. After that, just as he had declared, my brother claimed alimony from Stephanie and her lover. The lover, who had planned on moving in with Stephanie using the alimony from my brother, was outraged by the alimony claim and immediately broke things off with Stephanie. Having nowhere to live and being dumped by her lover, my former sister-in-law is now said to be living alone in an old apartment, working part-time. My brother went through a period of depression. He eventually sold the house, stating that he was done with marriage. Now he lives alone. Seeing my brother looking so lonely, I've been considering introducing him to a kind woman I recently met through work. She's also a divorcee, so they might be able to relate to each other easily. With those thoughts in mind, I head out and work hard again today. My in-laws left my mute and bedridden sister-in-law with me and went on vacation to Hawaii. Before they left, my husband Jack told me it's my job to take care of her and not to slack off. As soon as Jack and his family left, my sister-in-law, who can't speak, sat up and said we should get going too. My name's Lisa. I'm 29 years old. When I was a teenager, I dreamed of becoming a pop star. But as I got older, I realized it was just a passing dream, and before I knew it, I was in my late 20s. I met Jack through a friend and started dating him because my mom, with whom I live, kept asking when she would see her grandchild. Jack once dreamed of being in the entertainment industry too, but now he works at a big company in downtown Manhattan. After college, I worked at a bank until I got married and quit. One day, Jack and I visited his parents' house. Jack's younger sister, Lucy, got sick with a fever when she was little. Her mom thought it was just a cold, but when the fever didn't go away, they took her to the doctor. Turns out she had encephalitis from the flu, which left her with brain damage and bedridden. The fever also damaged the part of her brain that controls speech, so she can't talk. Mostly, it was my mother-in-law who took care of Lucy. For some reason, Lucy and I got along well, and I always looked forward to visiting Jack's family. Since Lucy can't speak, we use sign language to communicate after becoming close. I also naturally learned sign language. One day, I signed to Lucy. "We're like best friends who've known each other forever, aren't we?" She replied, "Yes, we are. Let's stay close friends forever." I said, "Of course we will." However, my mother-in-law, who is quite different from Lucy, was always sarcastic towards me. Jack and I live about a 30-minute drive away from his parents' house. Occasionally, my mother-in-law would drive over unannounced and start nitpicking on me. She'd say things like, "Jackie's shoes are filthy. If a man's shoes are dirty, it reflects poorly on his work. It's your responsibility to keep them clean." She always referred to Jack as Jackie and insisted that I fold the laundry neatly because if I didn't, Jackie will be in a bad mood. The one who raised Jack this way was none other than her. No matter how late Jack got home, I was not allowed to go to bed before him, even if he said it was okay for me to do so. My mother-in-law would say such old-fashioned things. When we were dating and initially after we got married, Jack was very kind and never disagreed with me. For example, if I wasn't feeling well and asked him to have dinner outside, he would readily agree. If I saw a designer bag I liked, he would buy it for me the following month. However, about a year after we got married, Jack started to change, or perhaps he returned to his original self. He started coming home late from work, always reeking of alcohol. On weekends, he claimed work kept him away from home, and he would decline my requests to join him when he occasionally visited his parents' home, which was kind of odd. One day, I decided to confront him about it. "Jack, you've become so distant lately. It feels like you're a completely different person," I said. Jack glared at me and replied, "That's not true. You're overthinking things." I retorted, "I don't think I am. You barely talk to me anymore." He told me to stop bringing it up and walked away to take a shower, ending the conversation. One day, Jack surprised me by saying, "This Sunday, I'm going home. What are you going to do?" Jack surprised me with this question, as he had always refused my company on such visits before. "Wait, I can come with you this time," I asked. He replied, "That's why I'm asking." "Well, of course I'll come then. I like to see Lucy too," I added. Jack frowned a bit and said, "You and Lucy seem to get along really well, huh?" "Yes, we do. It feels like we've been best friends forever," I responded, noticing Jack's slight grimace at my words. On Sunday, I drove us to Jack's family home in Nebraska. We stopped at a bakery along the way to buy some pastries as a gift. Jack's mother always frowned when she saw me, but she would light up upon receiving the pastries. When we arrived, his mother came to greet us as usual, but she frowned at my sight, almost as if she was not happy to see me. "Mother-in-law, please have some of these," I said, handing her the pastries. She snatched them from me and peered inside before replying, "Is it these pastries again? They're getting boring. But since you insist, I'll have them. Her face lit up like a child receiving a toy. Is father around today? Jack asked. Jack's father was elderly but still worked actively. He's out at a meeting. Why, did you need something? She asked. No, not really. I just had something I wanted to talk about with him, he replied. I hadn't heard anything about this from Jack. What's going on? Did you have something to tell your father? I asked. It's none of your business, Jack responded. What do you mean? We're a married couple, aren't we? Can you just stop nagging? Jack retorted, to which his mother added, Exactly. If Jack doesn't want to tell you something, you shouldn't be prying. I decided not to respond, knowing that arguing with her would be fruitless. Just then, Jack's sister appeared. Oh, Jack, you're here, she said. Sis, perfect timing. I have something to discuss, Jack started. What is it? She asked. I can take a long vacation next month. I was thinking about a family trip to Hawaii. How about you, sis? Jack proposed. I'll pass. I don't have a passport, she replied. I was taken aback. Jack, who was always busy with work and rarely took time off, was suggesting a trip to Hawaii. Jack, is everything all right with your job? I'm only suggesting this trip because my work's going fine, Jack explained. My mother-in-law seemed displeased with my interference in Jack's business. Frowning deeply, she said to me, You shouldn't meddle with decisions Jack has made. You're really nosy, aren't you? That's right. And Lisa, the reason I asked you here today is because I want you to take care of Lucy during the time we're on vacation. Jack's mother continued. I was momentarily taken aback, but then I realized that staying here with Lucy would be much more enjoyable than going on a trip to Hawaii with my mother-in-law. Okay, I will take care of Lucy, but if that was the case, you didn't need to bring me all the way here to tell me that, did you? I said. I figured if I told you in front of my mother, you'd understand quicker, Jack replied. He must have assumed I'd resist when I found out I couldn't go to Hawaii. And if I did, he wanted my mother-in-law to forcefully convince me. It was clear to me that this was his intent. I was left feeling dumbfounded and left the room to head to Lucy's room. Lucy looked delighted to see me. It's been a while. How have you been? I asked. I'm good. What brings you here today? Jack asked me to come with him to our parents' house, so I did. But it's strange. Before, whenever Jack came here, he used to tell me I couldn't come along. My brother is definitely hiding something. He's always been secretive. So apparently he's going to Hawaii next month, but I'll be staying back. I think that's better though, I said with a smile. Lucy also replied with a grin. In that case, you should come over and stay here. Sure, I'll do that. After that, Lucy and I had a great time chatting. I always wondered why Lucy and my mother-in-law were so different. About an hour later, Jack came to get me, and we headed home. At that time, Lucy gave me a slight wink. She revealed a shocking truth and an even more shocking plan to me. A month later, on the day of the Hawaii trip, Jack and I went to his parents' house. Although I wasn't going to Hawaii, I brought my luggage to stay at my in-laws for a week with Lucy. When I returned to the living room, everyone going to Hawaii was already there. It seemed that Jack's father wasn't going, as he wasn't present. As the departure time neared, the entire family, with Jack's voice rising above the rest, chimed in, Taking care of Lucy is your job. Don't slack off. Even my mother-in-law added, Please get along well with Lucy. It's better for you to stay here, isn't it? If anything happens to Lucy, it's all your fault. We'll hold you responsible. It was absurd for someone who was about to abandon their immobile sister for a vacation in Hawaii to say these words, but I did not react at all. It didn't matter what Jack said. I wasn't in the mood to see them off. So I went back to Lucy's room. Right then, Lucy sprang up energetically from her bed and called out to me, Come on, let's get going. It echoed a recent conversation we had when Lucy confessed. You know, I could actually walk, and with walking came the ability to converse. Since when? I asked. Since last year, I suppose. Why have you been hiding this from the rest of the family? Lucy began sharing an unexpected tale. Actually, my father and mother are both remarried. I'm my dad's child from his previous marriage, and my sister and brother are from my mom's side. I was surprised, but considering how distant and cold my mother-in-law usually was towards Lucy, I couldn't help but think, I thought so. Is that so? Lucy confirmed, yeah, my mom despises me, and I didn't want to talk to her, so I pretended that I couldn't. And your father? I inquired. Dad knows everything. He's always on my side. Lucy explained, that's why, regarding this trip to Hawaii, I'm thinking we should go too. I was puzzled, What do you mean? Lucy clarified, I mean, I'm planning to go to Hawaii on the same day with you. We'll even stay at the same resort. Lucy said this with a sparkle in her eye, catching me completely off guard. I'd be thrilled to go to Hawaii with you, Lucy. But do you even have a passport? Lucy reassured me, of course, I secretly got my passport last month. And don't worry about the expenses. My dad is covering our plane tickets and the resort, including yours. I see. I'm really looking forward to this. That's how we ended up at the airport today. When Lucy and I arrived, my father-in-law was there waiting to see us off. He greeted me, Lisa, it's been a while. I know it must be surprising, but I hope you enjoy the trip to Hawaii. Thank you, father-in-law. I feel guilty for all the plane tickets and resort fees you've covered. He reassured me, don't worry about it. As long as you two have fun, I'm happy. I thanked him for his kindness. After that, we boarded a plane from a different airline than my husband's family. We landed in Hawaii early in the morning, took a taxi from the airport, and checked into the resort hotel. Lucy and I were sharing a room. I mentioned to Lucy, your father seems pretty well traveled. Lucy confirmed, yeah, he's been on several international business trips. He's even been to Hawaii a few times. So what's the plan? I'm guessing my mom and everyone will dine at the restaurant here tonight. I'm thinking of surprising them. Lucy suggested, that sounds like fun. I'm excited. Should we get some rest to recover from getting jet-lagged? That sounds like a good idea. I couldn't sleep at all on the plane. After taking a shower, we climbed into bed and quickly fell asleep. We woke up around late afternoon, close to 4 o'clock. Lucy was already awake, starting to wear makeup. I'm sorry I slept too much, I said. No, don't worry about it. I just woke up too. We really had a good sleep, didn't we? Fully recharged and ready for our battle, Lucy replied. Around 7 o'clock, I said to Lucy, I'll go and see at Chuck, the restaurant. As I was looking for Jack and his party from the shadows near the entrance of the restaurant, I found them dining joyfully in a far-off spot. I was too far away from them, so I decided to venture deeper into the restaurant. From my position, all I could see was their backs, and it was hard to identify anyone. But I spotted the back of a young woman that I didn't recognize. There wasn't any such woman when they had left Jack's parents' house. Upon seeing this, I was taken aback, nearly letting out a loud gasp, but I managed to suppress it. When I strained my ears, I could intermittently hear Jack and my mother-in-law's voices. I'm glad it's not that woman today, Jack said. Yeah, I really drew the short straw. She's tainted my family record. If only we had an elegant daughter like her from the start. I want to divorce her and start fresh soon. Try to find a reason for the divorce and extract a hefty alimony from that woman. Even without a cause for the divorce, it's fine. I can fabricate as many as I want. She's so bad that I want to throw her in the trash. I want to see my grandchild from you and her soon, my mother-in-law said to the woman with a smile that she had never shown me before. I was driven by the urge to step forward and confront the woman, but I held it in. I returned to my room and told Lucy that it took a while. I'm sorry. I saw something shocking. Jack brought a woman that I've never seen before, I explained. What? Lucy was surprised. I was about to scream. Jack and my mother-in-law were continuously bad-mouthing me, and Jack even said he would find a reason for divorce. That's terrible. Jack called me a bad catch, but seeing him with another woman, I felt relieved. Now I can divorce him outright. That's a good thing. Shall we make our entrance then? Lucy suggested. Lucy and I headed towards the restaurant hall. When we entered the restaurant, we requested to sit near Jack's table and were able to get a seat quite close to them. They didn't notice our arrival, and as we were sitting quite close, we could hear their conversation well, which was still filled with derogatory comments about me. I was amazed and ended up giving a bitter smile at how they could badmouth me indefinitely. Seeing my face, Lucy gave a nod with a smile, which was a cue for us to begin our counterattack. I stood up from my seat, stepped forward towards Jack, and shouted, "Are you all having a good time?" I'll never forget the look on Jack and my mother-in-law's faces at that moment. Their mouths agape, eyes wide open, they froze for a few seconds. After a few seconds, my mother-in-law finally spoke. "Why are you here? And how did Lucy get here without a wheelchair?" At her words, Lucy stood up, gave my mother-in-law a smile, and said, "I don't need a wheelchair. Thanks to you, my body and speech have returned to normal. I must have caused you quite a bit of trouble for a long time." "When did you regain your ability to speak?" my mother-in-law asked. "I wonder when that was. Maybe last year," Lucy replied calmly. "Then why did you hide it until now?" my mother-in-law questioned. "Because it was better if you guys continued to believe that I couldn't speak. You and Jack were speaking ill of me earlier, weren't you?" Lucy's revelation made my mother-in-law's face turn pale in an instant. "What do you mean?" she asked. "Yeah, we weren't saying anything bad about you, Lisa," Jack retorted. "That won't work. I recorded everything on my phone. Do you want me to play it back right now?" I countered. My mother-in-law fell silent, but Jack stood up, barking, "Lisa, you've been causing me trouble all this time, and now you're making these outrageous claims." Jack's accusations only fueled my resolve. Once I return back home, I'll immediately contact my lawyer to initiate our divorce procedure. You can't deny the fact that you're on a vacation abroad with another woman. Plus, you described getting with me as drawing a blank lottery ticket, so I expect you to demonstrate sincerity by paying a hefty compensation for that comment, I declared. At my words, my mother-in-law seemed to acknowledge her defeat, and her attitude abruptly changed. "Lisa dear, I really like you. Please try to get along with Jack." "This woman is not involved with Jack," she pleaded. "I'm sorry, but I can't do that. Since I am a blank lottery ticket, I cannot live with Jack. Please enjoy your time with this woman. Oh, and I might also seek compensation from her. Isn't that exciting?" I smirked. The woman in question turned pale and began to tremble upon hearing my words. Unfazed by the public gaze, Jack fell to his knees and pleaded, "Lisa, I beg you, don't make this a big deal. My company has strict rules about this." But I remained firm. "I will never forgive you. You are married, and yet here you are on an overseas trip with another woman," I said firmly. Upon hearing my words, my mother-in-law also fell to her knees next to Jack, pleading, "Please forgive my son," tears streaming down her face. By this time, all the other customers were watching us, and the restaurant manager started walking towards our table. Seeing this, I got up and said, "Well, Lucy and I will head back to our room. You all enjoy your Hawaiian vacation. I guess things will get a bit difficult when you get back home." Jack cried out, shouting at the top of his lungs, "Please forgive me. I can't afford to pay any compensation." At his loud outburst, the restaurant manager frowned, instructed something to a nearby staff member, and then briskly told Jack something. It was a polite way of telling him that he was disturbing the other guests and needed to leave. However, Jack was taken aback, not understanding the manager's words. Soon, 2 buffed-up security guards arrived and hauled Jack away. Jack was sobbing and struggling, but he was no match for the 2 bulky men. My mother-in-law and the woman were dumbfounded, unable to utter a word, while Lucy and I were also surprised by the turned events. I thought Jack got what he deserved. A week later, Lucy and I returned home. Jack was quickly released and seemed to have returned to his room. However, I later heard that he had been in a state of shock since returning to his room and had kept to himself until the end of the trip. The day after I returned home, I went to the law firm where my old college friend worked to request a divorce proceeding. Unfortunately, my friend was not present, but a female lawyer was assigned to me. She was very easy to talk to, and I was able to explain everything that had happened. After listening to my story, she assured me that a divorce was possible, that I could claim alimony, and that she would investigate the woman who was with Jack in Hawaii before determining whether I could claim alimony from her as well. A month later, the female lawyer contacted me and informed me that it had been proved that Jack had been dating the other woman for about 6 months. Hence, she said it was possible for me to demand alimony from this woman too. I requested the female lawyer, "Please squeeze as much alimony as you can from Jack and his woman." She smiled and nodded. 2 months later, I was officially divorced, and into my bank account was deposited the alimony from the two. I mumbled as I saw the amount, and that's karma for calling me a blank lottery ticket. 3 months later, Jack and my mother-in-law suddenly visited my place. Despite it being only 3 months, they had lost a lot of weight and looked completely haggard. I asked them, "What do you want?" "I don't want to see your faces." Jack replied in a thin voice, "I'm sorry. Could you lend me some money? I've lost my job, and the woman ran away. I don't even have money for food." My mother-in-law also spoke in a whisper, "I've divorced my husband too. I don't have money. Please, I beg you." My mother-in-law was in tears. I responded, "Too bad. I have absolutely no obligation to help you, and even if I did, I would never help you guys out. Now please leave." After they left, I sprinkled a large amount of salt at my entrance to get rid of bad energy from my house. I received the shocking revelation at my workplace. My daughter, left in the car, had passed away. The news came abruptly from a police officer, leaving me in a state of distress. Frantically, I hurried to contact my mother, who was supposed to be watching over my child. Thankfully, she assured me that everything was fine. My daughter was currently enjoying a snack. Relief washed over me momentarily, but it was short-lived. The penetrating gaze of the police officer raised suspicions, making me realize a hidden truth. I am Kinayan Mullen, 38 years old, residing with my husband and child. My husband, 4 years my senior, works as a sales manager at a house manufacturing company. His demanding job often keeps him occupied on both weekdays and holidays, making him less involved in childcare and household duties. Requesting his help in picking up our child on his days off often resulted in frustration. Recalling a past incident when I worked at a drugstore on a Sunday, I asked him, who was on a day off, to care for our child. His response was dismissive, stating that he needed to relax on his day off, unlike me, a mere part-timer. Despite my concerns about his nonchalant attitude and whether he was properly caring for our child, Lucien, who is adept at playing independently, didn't require much attention. However, that day at work was difficult as I couldn't shake off the worry about my husband's caregiving capabilities. Subsequently, I entrusted my child to my nearby living mother. Fearing confrontation and reluctant to make situations awkward, I struggled to voice my concerns. "He's exhausted. I need to understand that," I reasoned with myself, grappling with the challenges of parenting and managing household responsibilities on a part-time basis. Then, a pivotal incident unfolded on a particularly cold day. At the crack of dawn, the store manager called me urgently. "Could you fill in for a colleague who isn't feeling well?" Staff members often covered for each other's shifts. "I'll be a bit late. I have to drop off my son at my mom's, but it's fine," I assured and ended the call. Upon contacting my mother, she readily agreed, prompting me to hastily prepare. Unexpectedly, my usually reserved husband, Jeffrey, offered unusually supportive words. "Should I take him to your mother-in-law's?" I was taken aback by his uncharacteristic concern. "Really? Are you sure? What about your job?" His unexpected support astonished me, and he assured, "It's all right. I'll make it on time." Observing him happily picking up our son, I expressed my gratitude. "Thanks, but he needs a car seat. Why don't I use your car today? I'll even drop you off at the train station. You're not comfortable driving my car, right?" His large car intimidated me, but he reassured, "It's genuinely helpful." Following a safe day at work, I received sincere thanks from the store manager, and even regular customers expressed their gratitude. The warmth of appreciation made me happy. However, just before concluding my shift around 4:00 p.m., an unexpected intercom announcement summoned me to the backyard. Two men awaited, and the store manager discreetly informed me, "It's the police," introducing me with a puzzled expression. "This is Cam Mullen, police." Yes, I am Mullen. Despite my confusion, I struggled to piece together the situation, but nothing seemed to justify a policeman in casual attire approaching me. The officer scrutinized me from head to toe, urging me to remain calm as he delivered the devastating news. "Please calm down and listen. Your daughter has passed away." "The daughter? Whose daughter?" My confusion deepened as they proceeded to explain the grim circumstances. A 1-year-old girl had tragically succumbed to the cold in my car, parked behind the station. The police, treating me as a suspect, detailed how the adjacent car's driver had discovered the distressing scene, prompting an ambulance call that proved too late. Only then did I realize I was under suspicion for creating the tragic situation. "Wait a second. I don't understand what you're saying. I have a son, and my mother is with him today." Yes, I'll cooperate at the police station." Despite my protests and attempts to clarify, the police officer lightly patted me down, refusing to let me speak further. It became apparent that they assumed I had left my child unattended in the car while I was at work. Treated like a criminal, it was only after being placed in a police car that I was granted permission to contact my mother. This is absurd. I'm with him, of course. My mother, unaware of the situation, seemed shocked by my call. Despite the relief flooding over me upon hearing the voices of my mother and son, knowing my child was safe, the stark reality of the girl's tragic death in my car lingered. Upon reaching the police station, a detective with an intense gaze relentlessly questioned me, describing how my husband had taken our child to my mother's place that morning seemed to temporarily dispel suspicions. However, my attempts to contact my husband during the police inquiry remained unanswered. They asked, "Can you confirm if you know the missing girl?" This moment proved more challenging than the initial suspicion. Gazing at the girl, appearing peacefully asleep, I cried, overwhelmed with guilt. Unfortunately, I only had a vague impression of having seen her somewhere. Honestly admitting this to the police, they urged, "If you recall anything, contact me," finally releasing me as darkness enveloped the outside. Anxious to reunite with my son, I rushed to my mother's house. In the midst of explaining the situation to my mother, tears flowed, providing comfort as my child slept peacefully. Returning home after 9:00 p.m., my son fell asleep once more. I attempted numerous calls to my husband, who remained unresponsive. A midnight message arrived, revealing an unexpected business trip. Despite my immediate call, there was no answer, so I messaged back, informing him of the unsettling events. However, subsequent attempts to reach him were met with silence. The following day, I faced the morning after a sleepless night, haunted by a lingering concern. Beyond the distress involving my husband, the image of that girl persisted, as if I had encountered her before. Resolving to seek answers, I waited for my husband's work hours to commence, gathering the courage to make the call. My intention was to have his workplace contact him during his business trip. Surprisingly, I learned that my husband had taken a vacation since the previous day. Grateful yet perplexed, I found myself temporarily unable to process anything after the phone call. Amidst the shock, the idea of confiding in my best friend Chrissy dawned on me. Ready to make the call, I was met with astonishment upon opening my phone. In haste, I reviewed the messages from Chrissy lie. It's a lie. One of the images there shook me to the core, as the girl in the picture with Chrissy was the same girl left in my car. Oh my God, it was Chrissy's daughter who passed away. Suddenly, the fragments of yesterday's inexplicable events started connecting. The question echoed. Why was Chrissy's child abandoned in my car? Convinced that this wasn't a delusion, I began to suspect my husband and best friend of having an affair. 2 years ago, Chrissy, single after a divorce, had cryptically shared about her pregnancy, refusing to disclose the father. "I won't tell you who the dad is. I'm just a single mother," she had laughed meaningfully. The possibility that the girl might be my husband's child loomed, though uncertain. Fueled by unbearable anger at being deceived for so many years, I felt a determination to unveil the truth in honor of the departed girl. My lack of assertiveness had allowed me to navigate my marriage without confronting my husband. However, upon discovering the betrayal, a newfound determination stirred within me. Realizing that two foolish adults had tormented an innocent child, I promptly took action to address the issue. After dropping my daughter off at the nursery, I headed straight to Chrissy's house. Upon arriving at her apartment and ringing the doorbell, Chrissy, still half asleep, answered. "It's been a while. Did I wake you up? Huh, Kanaya, what's going on?" Chrissy, lacking makeup, attempted to shut the door, but I anticipated it and placed my bag between the doors. "There's Jeffrey too, right? Let's talk, the three of us." Despite Chrissy's panic, I found myself chuckling, perhaps due to the absurdity of the situation. Chrissy seemed unnerved by my strange laughter. "All right, you should have told me you're coming," she grumbled but gestured for me to come in. Navigating to the back room, I heard my husband's voice calling out in surprise. "What, Kenya?" He was still in bed. However, his surprise was short-lived, and by the time he joined us in the living room, he seemed prepared to face me. "Well, you've already found out," he nonchalantly remarked as soon as he saw my expression. Chrissy, who had been visibly upset moments ago, was now grinning behind my husband. "Can you not make fun of me? I have something I want to ask." "Oh, I'm scared. Despite the urge to scold Chrissy for her unserious demeanor, I suppressed it. "I assume you've already been informed about her daughter. If you know that, why are you two here? Why haven't you gone to pick her up?" It seemed they anticipated that I would be contacted regarding Chrissy's daughter. I couldn't fathom their actions, wondering just how much they knew about the situation. "Give me a break. The police are taking care of that kid right now." She didn't even realize her child was missing and was shockingly optimistic, I learned, feeling disheartened by her ignorance. Simultaneously, I decided to unveil the truth after listening to their version of events. "How did this happen?" We were surprised too. There were a lot of people around when we returned to the parking lot. "Oh yes, some people are just so dramatic," they casually remarked, delving into the details of the previous day. My husband, on vacation, had initially planned to spend time with Chrissy. However, Chrissy's child complicated matters when they tried to enter the hotel in front of the station. That's why he parked my car in a lot and went to the hotel with her child still inside. As I learned of this impulsive decision, my jaw couldn't help but drop. When I exited the hotel and returned to the parking lot, the police were surrounding my car. He even saw the ambulance and thought it was a bad situation, so he ran away. In a typical scenario, one would be concerned about the child's safety, but they interpreted the situation in their favor. I'm dismayed to hear that she's relieved to be free from taking care of her child, under the protection of the police. "How long has your relationship been going on?" I confronted them directly, urging them to share their side of the story. "You're insensitive, Kaya. Right after I got divorced, it's been 4 years. I gave her some advice during her divorce, and things happened. It's a common pattern, I guess. Back then, I had suspected my husband of having an affair. Pregnant and anxious, I chalked it up to overthinking. I was astounded that my best friend was involved. So you're the father of Chrissy's child. Unlike my son, my daughter is cute." My husband candidly admitted, almost as if he aimed to provoke me. He confessed to the spontaneous idea of using my car, considering that Chrissy lacked one, and using my car with a child car seat would make outings with all three of them more convenient. "Then you should have divorced me and married Chrissy," I retorted, feeling like our time together had been wasted, placing the blame squarely on my husband. Yet again, he made an absurd claim. "If you do that, my company will find out about the affair and the child. It'll hinder my promotion." The idea of sacrificing our relationship for such reasons filled me with disgust towards my husband. "Kenya, that's not all." Chrissy, standing beside him, condescendingly laughed. Jeffrey told me his wife is a submissive housekeeper who doesn't talk back, allowing him to do whatever he wants. I questioned. Okay, but were you okay with that? You have kids too. I pondered while Chrissy burst into laughter. Ha, I'm sick of marriage. I just want financial support for my living expenses. Oh yes, unlike Kaya, Chrissy costs me a lot. She's high maintenance. Ha ha ha. My husband and Chrissy, speaking openly, seemingly treated me as if I were invisible. Faced with their selfishness, my patience neared its limit. Anyway, what's our plan now? You can't escape this. I subtly directed the conversation. Is it that much of a trouble, Chrissy? Go pick her up. Then we got caught, so I have to pick her up. But the police will be mad at me. Yeah, she's not old enough to come home alone. So far, they don't seem to care about her child even once. And when they speak, it's all about their own worries. Enough is enough. There's no room for sympathy. Finally, I decided to reveal the truth. Honestly, I'm dumbfounded. Both of you only think about yourselves. Oh, what do you want to say? My husband glared at me, but I remained unfazed. I'll tell you the truth. Your daughter passed away yesterday. She was left in the car in the middle of winter. I revealed, watching as their eyes widened, and they screamed. Poor thing. I can't imagine how cold it was. Oh, you're lying. Your shallow actions have cost the life of a young child. Chrissy pointed at me, shouting angrily. It's all your fault, Kaya. Chrissy, you can't be mad at me. Why don't you reflect on yourself a little? I retorted. Shut up. It's your fault that you married Jeffrey. I don't understand what Chrissy is saying. When she introduced him to me, I wondered if Chrissy was delirious because of the shock of losing her child. When I'm having a hard time with my divorce issues, you can't get married to show it off to me. It's not supposed to happen. It's your fault. What are you talking about? You got divorced because of your own infidelity. It's your fault. No, it wasn't supposed to be like this. Chrissy, who started crying, continued to blame herself, saying, I should have been happier. On the other hand, my husband attempted to make excuses in front of her sobbing. Oh, it's none of my business. I was just going to have an affair from the beginning. It's too late. Chrissy's child doesn't really know I'm the father, does she, Kenya? We're not divorced yet, are we? Saying that, he approached me. I brushed his hand away and uttered in the lowest voice possible, Coward, don't show up in front of me again. Ignoring their ugly argument, I slipped away to the police. 2 days later, a call from the police informed them that the surveillance camera footage from the parking lot was the deciding factor, leading to their arrest. Both of them would now face justice properly. Their actions had set them on a long and arduous road filled with thorns. Meanwhile, I started to live a peaceful life with my mother and son. At the suggestion of the drugstore manager, I ended up working as a full-time employee. The unexpected restart of my life filled me with excitement.
Early in the morning, lots of people were busy at the taxi garage. Amanda, a young woman who drives a taxi, had been fixing her car for a while without noticing anything else around her. Suddenly, a deep voice interrupted her. Hi, Amanda. It's early, and you're already fixing your car. What's wrong? Need a hand? Amanda stopped working, wiped sweat from her forehead, and looked up. She looked funny with smudges of engine oil on her nose and holding a dirty cloth and wrench. Hey, Barry. Thanks, but I've got it sorted. The ignition was acting up, but I changed some parts, and now it works fine. Let me clean up, and we can grab some coffee. I'm starving. I made some cabbage pies yesterday. Help yourself. Barry happily accepted and praised the pies. Amanda, you're amazing. These are tasty. You're good with cars, baking, and you're pretty. Too bad I'm married, and your fiancé is foolish. You should be appreciated and taken care of. Amanda sighed heavily, sat down with him, sipped her hot coffee, and said thanks, but men are all the same. They're nice at first, then they disappear. But I don't need anyone. I'll save up, have a child, and raise them alone. Just don't tell Mr. Ferris I'm pregnant. Before finishing her meal, the radio called her for a customer. She said goodbye to Barry and left, humming a tune. Amanda actually enjoyed driving a taxi a lot. Meeting different people and hearing their stories made her day exciting, even though there were some tough moments. If someone had told her 3 months ago that she'd be a taxi driver, she wouldn't have believed it. Amanda grew up in the countryside, where she lived with her grandfather. Her mom passed away when she was very young, and she never met her dad. Her grandpa took care of her so she wouldn't have to go to an orphanage. Amanda loved living in the countryside, with fields of wheat, fresh-smelling hay, and her favorite cat. Her grandpa taught her everything, from cutting grass to fixing their old Chevy. They even fixed up the whole car together. By the time she was 16, Amanda could drive just as well as anyone else. She passed her driving test on her first try, but then she decided to move to the city. Amanda knew there weren't many opportunities in the village, with all the young people leaving, so her grandpa gave her his savings and wished her luck. Amanda rented a room and got a job as a waitress in a cafe. It wasn't her favorite job because she had to stand all day and her back hurt by the end of each shift, but she needed to earn money somehow. Every day, a handsome young man named Steven came to the cafe during Amanda's lunch break. He always ordered coffee, sandwiches, and snacks, taking his time to enjoy them. Steven couldn't take his eyes off Amanda, and she felt shy whenever she served him. That's how they started talking. Steven worked as a manager in a tour company nearby and lived with his parents, who both worked in a bank. They were a regular family. Steven would give Amanda lots of compliments and flirt with her. One day, he brought her a beautiful bouquet of pink daisies, saying, "Daisies for my Amanda. You're as lovely as these flowers. I think about you all the time. I'd like to take you to the movies. I've already got tickets for the premiere. Would you like to come?" Amanda was thrilled when Steven asked her out, and they started seeing each other. Steven would meet Amanda after work, walk her home, and eventually started spending more time at her place. Amanda was overjoyed and hoped they would get married soon, as Steven had hinted at several times. But everything changed when Amanda found out she was pregnant. She took a test and felt a bit scared. She and Steven hadn't talked about having children yet, and they weren't planning a wedding. She decided to tell Steven everything that evening and see how he reacted. When Amanda told Steven she was pregnant, he stayed silent for a long time, looking unhappy. Amanda felt hurt and asked, "Are you happy, honey? It's our baby, yours and mine. Maybe we should get married sooner rather than later." Steven mumbled something unclearly, saying it was too soon and that he thought they were being careful. He said he needed to talk to his parents about it first. Then he left, not answering calls or showing up for lunch as planned. Amanda was exhausted and cried a lot, not understanding why Steven was acting this way. She was devastated when someone told her they saw Steven with another woman at the mall. Amanda couldn't believe it. She thought maybe it was a mistake, but she needed to find out for sure. She took time off work and waited for Steven outside his office. After waiting for 2 hours, Steven finally came out, but he wasn't alone. He was with the same woman from the mall, and they were kissing passionately in a fancy car. Amanda's heart sank, as she felt deeply hurt and betrayed. Losing control, she ran towards the car, banging on the glass and shouting, "You cheater! How could you do this to me?" Steven got out of the car, pushed Amanda away, and said he was sorry but that he was engaged to Peggy now because his parents had decided it. He told Amanda to leave and that it was over between them. Stunned, Amanda slapped Steven and told him she was pregnant with his child. But Steven didn't seem to care and just told her to go to the hospital and deal with it. And Peggy came out of the salon, looking at Amanda with disdain, and asked who she was. Steven dismissed Amanda, saying she was mistaken. Peggy warned Amanda not to interfere because she had connections through her father. Steven and Peggy drove off, splashing water on Amanda from a puddle. Amanda was left standing there, feeling like she was in a nightmare. Amanda couldn't bring herself to go to work. She cried at home for a week, feeling betrayed and devastated. She even thought about going to the hospital to deal with her pregnancy, but she was scared of what might happen. She was torn between her emotions and the fear of making a decision she couldn't undo. During one of her darkest days, her neighbor Barry came over to ask for medicine for his sick child. He noticed Amanda's distress and took her to his home, where his wife joined them. They gave Amanda some calming medicine, hot tea, and listened to her story patiently. Amanda needed someone to talk to share her pain, because the betrayal hurt her deeply. Amanda poured her heart out to Barry, not holding anything back. Barry listened, shaking his head in disbelief, and then asked quietly, "Wow, what a mess. Your Steven sounds like a real jerk. What are you going to do now? Amanda shrugged and said, I missed a week of work at the cafe, so they let me go. I guess I'll have to go back to the village to live with my grandfather. But I feel ashamed, and I don't know how I'll make a living there. Barry scratched his head and suggested, going back to the village isn't the best idea. What'll lead you there? Work on a farm. Listen, you've mentioned you can drive well and have a license. Why don't you work at our taxi company? We need more drivers, but our boss, Mr. Ferris, is strict. You'll have to work hard, but you'll earn a good salary if you're diligent. You can save up for the baby and then go on maternity leave. Just keep your pregnancy a secret or Mr. Ferris might not hire you. Amanda wiped her tears and thanked Barry, saying it was her dream job. She loved driving since she was a kid, and she was good at it. She decided to start fresh and leave the cafe behind. She promised to come back the next day and thanked Barry and his wife. They encouraged her not to give up and assured her they'd help. So, Amanda began working at the taxi company. At first, Mr. Ferris doubted her abilities, wondering if she could handle heavy luggage or fix car issues on the road. But Amanda proved herself, driving confidently and handling any problems that arose. Impressed, Mr. Ferris hired her. Amanda felt better and threw herself into her work. She didn't have time to dwell on her pain anymore. She enjoyed interacting with clients and driving around the city. Amanda felt happy again, even though her belly wasn't showing yet, and she wore loose clothes to hide her pregnancy. So Amanda kept working hard until her maternity leave. Thankfully, she didn't suffer much from morning sickness and only had occasional backaches from sitting for long hours. It was still better than carrying trays at the cafe. The only problem was the nosy and greedy owner of the taxi company. After every shift, he demanded detailed reports and even installed cameras to monitor the driver's interactions with customers and handling of money. Despite this, Amanda found the team to be excellent, especially since there was no gossip or drama like at the cafe. She remained good friends with Barry and enjoyed their tea breaks, where they talked about life. Today, Amanda had a big order to drive a client far out of the city, promising good pay for the long distance. She was in a great mood, already planning for her baby's arrival and trying not to dwell on Stephen's betrayal. However, upon arriving at the client's mansion, she found him extremely drunk and indecisive about taking the cab. Eventually, the homeowner canceled the ride, leaving Amanda feeling frustrated as she wasted time and fuel without earning anything. She knew Mr. Ferris would be unhappy, but it wasn't her fault. To top it off, heavy rain started pouring, further dampening Amanda's mood. As she drove halfway back to town, a man suddenly emerged from the woods ahead of her. He staggered from side to side, covered in mud and dried blood. Amanda couldn't just drive past him, so she slowed down to see if he needed help. She decided that if he was drunk, she wouldn't give him a ride, but she wanted to make sure he was okay. Amanda put on her hooded jacket and got out of the car. She ran up to the man to check on him. Hey, are you okay? Can I help you? Where are you going? If you need to go to the city, I can give you a ride. The man looked at her with tired eyes and whispered weakly, help me. Then he passed out and fell by the roadside. Amanda tried to wake him up, urging him to get up so she could help him into the car. After struggling, she managed to get him into the car and drove him to the hospital. Along the way, she tried to learn more about him, but he only said his name was Mitchell and was in pain. Amanda made sure he was taken care of by the hospital staff before saying goodbye and wishing him well. When Amanda returned to the taxi park, she realized she was late and worried Mr. Ferris would be angry. She had forgotten about the camera in the car, but Mr. Ferris saw everything from his office and was furious. He scolded Amanda for refusing a client, wasting gasoline, and helping the homeless man, saying she cost him a lot of money. Amanda defended herself, saying the client was sick and the man needed help. But Mr. Ferris didn't listen and threatened to deduct the cost of the gasoline from her salary and take away her bonus as punishment. Now get back to work. You're completely out of control, doing whatever you want. And don't forget to clean the car. It's covered in dirt. How will decent people get in it? Amanda angrily washed the car, thinking to herself, well, this is how you get rewarded for doing good deeds. You're left with nothing. Mr. Ferris is a scoundrel. Nothing is sacred. Exhausted and sad, she finished her shift, went home, and fell asleep immediately after taking a shower. She had no energy left. The next morning, Amanda was woken up by a knock on her door. She was surprised to find 3 well-dressed men, two of them bodyguards, standing outside. An unpleasant older man, clearly the big boss, entered without invitation and greeted her. "Good morning. Your name is Amanda, isn't it? You staked my son yesterday, picked him up on the road, and sent him to the hospital. I'm truly grateful to you. Thank you for not letting a man die." Saying this, he placed a puffy envelope on the table. Amanda waved her hands in amazement, saying, "No need, I just felt sorry for him. The poor guy was badly beaten, barely able to walk, and was in rags. How did he end up in that wooded area?" The businessman seemed taken aback by the question but still answered, "You understand? It's an unpleasant story. My son was kidnapped by bandits and held captive in a cabin in the woods. He managed to escape miraculously and tried to make his way home." "Did he say anything to you on the way?" Amanda shook her head. "No, he didn't. He was in a lot of pain and only introduced himself as Mitchell. That's all." The man grinned and said, "Well, that's probably the best news today. All right, we got to go. Take the money. Have a good day. Goodbye." The trio left, and Amanda ran to the window and gasped. There was a whole motorcade of jeeps outside. She counted 4 of them. The girl counted the money. There was a huge sum by her standards. Clearly not a simple gratitude. She pondered. Her sleep was gone. No, something's wrong. First of all, this glossy big shot doesn't look like his father. Not a drop of worry, regret for the fate of his son. His eyes are cold and calculating. Close people don't act like that. Secondly, why did he ask so much if his son had spoken up? So there's something to hide. Thirdly, how did this man learn everything about me so quickly? And most importantly, why did he come to me? And perhaps this money is not gratitude at all but payment for my silence. No. I must go to the hospital again and check on Mitchell. I should find out from him what happened to him. Luckily, today's my day off. Anyway, Amanda bought some goodies on the way and went to the trauma department where she left Mitchell yesterday. But she was not allowed. "Why can't I visit my friend? I won't be long. I'll ask how he's doing, and that's all. Let me in for a little while, please." The doctor himself came down to her and strictly said, "Unfortunately, we can't let you in to see Mitchell Libman. He suddenly fell into a coma and is now in the intensive care unit. And it is forbidden to enter there. You have nothing to do there." "Excuse me." Amanda was shocked. Yesterday he was weak and beaten, but he was walking on his own feet. And now, all of a sudden, he's in a coma. What's wrong with him? The doctor waved her away angrily. "Why should I report to you? Who are you to him? His father's with him, he knows everything. They'll let you know when you can visit his son. But for now, his condition is extremely serious. I don't have time to argue with you. I have other patients waiting for me. Have a wonderful day." Amanda was very upset and began to leave the hospital. But then she was stopped by the nurse. She took Amanda to a back room and whispered, "It's not as the doctor said. You're Mitchell's fiancé, aren't you?" I guessed it right away. "Well, there's something wrong here. He's not in a coma. He's just being given some powerful medication, and it's unclear why." But I noticed that respectable man who seemed to be his father gave the doctor a big envelope with money and asked him to make sure that Mitchell never left the hospital. Not at all. I treated his wounds yesterday. It was nothing serious. I think the doctor sold his soul to the devil because he is an avid gambler and he needs money. I know this because I have a cousin who suffers from this addiction. I have seen the doctor several times in the casino when I took my cousin out of there. I told you the truth, but don't give me away, okay? Or they'll fire me or destroy me. All right, I'm off. Amanda was in shock. She didn't know what to do, how to help Mitchell. She scolded herself. Well, I got involved in a story again. I have many problems myself, and I'm worried about other people's problems. What a stupid character I have. The girl was tormented with worries and doubts all night, not sleeping a wink, and by morning, she decided for sure that she would not be able to live peacefully if she did not save Mitchell. After all, the guy was her age. Why should he die? It's not right, it's not fair. Amanda's first impulse was to run to the police and tell them everything she knew. But then she changed her mind. After all, if the rich man had so much money and connections to buy everyone and everything, then in the police, he probably has his own people. And what could she charge him with? It's all just rumors so far, no proof. The worst part was that there was no one to consult. And then Amanda remembered Nurse Deborah, so she decided to talk to her again, setting up a meeting at a cafe. Surprised, Deborah arrived on time. Amanda was the first to start. "I'm sorry to bother you again. It's just that I have no one else to turn to. I can't tell anybody about something like this. They won't believe it. So I beg you to help me save Mitchell. I want to get him out of the hospital. I can get a car. I can drive. But how can I get him out? He's in a coma right now." Deborah paused for a moment, then replied, "Okay, let's think this through. I have the night shift the day after tomorrow. It'll be Saturday. There will only be a few people on duty in the ward. Plus, Mitchell's doctor has Sunday off. During my shift, I can refrain from giving him the medicine that keeps him in a coma, so he should wake up in about 12 to 16 hours. I'll provide you with a white coat, a cap, and a mask to make sure no one recognizes you. We can also give you a name tag that says you're a doctor. We'll try to handle this ourselves. I'm hesitant to involve anyone else because I don't fully trust anyone. The only thing left is to figure out what to say when they come looking for him, which will likely happen during my shift. I could get fired for this, but you know what? Let them. I can't take it anymore." Amanda let out a heavy sigh and responded, "I don't have a plan. I'll take him to my place as he is. Nowhere else. Once he wakes up and tells us who kidnapped him and why, we'll go to the prosecutor's office and let them handle it all." They agreed on that plan. Amanda had been so nervous for the past days that she could barely focus during her work, and on the designated day, she trembled occasionally. She was terrified of what might go wrong. What if it didn't work? What if Mitchell didn't wake up at her house, but it was too late to retreat, and on the appointed night, Amanda turned off the camera after the last order and drove to the hospital. She changed her clothes as Deborah had told her to, crossed herself, exhaled, and went straight to the ICU. Deborah was already waiting for her in the ward. Together they placed Mitchell on a gurney and hurriedly took him towards the exit. The gurney rattled on the tiled floor of the deserted corridor, causing Amanda's heart to race. She silently prayed that no one would approach and question their actions. Thankfully, they were fortunate. Everything went smoothly. At this late hour, all the patients were already asleep, including the doctor on duty. Once they placed Mitchell in the backseat of the car, Deborah quickly returned to her post, whispering a goodbye to Amanda. "Be careful, Amanda. I wish you and your fiancé a speedy recovery. I've packed the necessary medications and written down the instructions for you on a sheet of paper." In a hurry, Amanda drove frantically, her heart racing with fear. She felt like a criminal, constantly checking her surroundings, afraid of being followed. When she reached her house, she called her neighbor Barry urgently and whispered into the receiver, "Barry, could you come out for a minute? I need your help. I'm sorry for being so late." Barry was shocked when he saw the unconscious guy in the back seat. Amanda begged, "Please help me. I can't lift him alone. We need to get him to my room. Just don't ask questions right now, okay? I promise I'll explain everything later." Without hesitation, Barry helped carry Mitchell into the room and placed him on the sofa. He asked, "What's going on, Amanda? Why did you bring him here? Did you also take the taxi from work? Mr. Ferris will be angry. Did anyone see you?" Amanda shook her head, replying, "No one saw me. I turned off the camera. I'll turn it back on. You won't tell on me, will you? I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm trying to save this man's life. Do you believe me?" Barry waved his hand and said, "I know you're a good person. I believe you, but please, keep me out of it. I have a family to think about. I won't tell anyone, but I don't want to know too much. I'm going home. I did what I could." Amanda returned the taxi to the company without any issues. The guards treated her well, and she was sure they wouldn't report her. However, she couldn't stop trembling from the evening's events and emotions. She arrived home on the last bus, checked that Mitchell was breathing normally, and collapsed beside him, exhausted. She was really worried and started crying. "God, what did I get myself into? Barry was right, this is really dangerous. And if that rich man finds me, what's going to happen to me? And what about Mitchell? I don't have anyone to protect me. My life feels like a detective story, and I'm the main character. It's so scary, but at least I managed to save someone. That's something to be happy about." 13 hours went by, and Mitchell finally woke up. He squinted in the sunlight and looked around, feeling confused. "Hey, where am I? Why am I not in the hospital? Oh, I remember you. You're the taxi driver who saved me on the highway. I never got to say thank you. Amanda smiled and said, "I'll tell you a story that might make you thank me again, even though it's risky for me to do so. But still." Amanda went on to tell Mitchell everything she knew about his supposed father, the drugs he was given, and her own pregnancy. She needed to get it off her chest and share it with someone. Mitchell listened closely without interrupting, staying silent for a while. Then he started telling his own story. "Yeah, he's not my real dad. But to make you understand, let me start from the beginning. It's a long and complicated story. My parents were wealthy. My dad owned a bunch of hotels, and my mom was a psychologist for famous people. When I was 3, my dad was threatened by some criminals who wanted to take over his business. That's when he wrote his will, saying that everything would be mine when I turned 25. I think that's why all this chaos started. I'm turning 25 next month. My dad had a close friend named Hank Long, who was also kind of a relative. My dad trusted him a lot. After the threats, the bad guys attacked my dad and shot him while he was in the car. My mom got really sick from sadness and stress. She already had a weak heart and passed away not long after. So I was left all alone at 3 years old. Mr. Long, my dad's friend, took care of me and became like a dad to me. He's the one who came to see you. Mr. Long took over my dad's business and made me feel like I owed him for not sending me to an orphanage. He didn't treat me badly, but he didn't show me much love either. When I was 13, he got married, and I felt even more like I didn't belong. He sent me to a fancy school in England and then to university. Finally, I started coming back home to start my own business, but my stepdad still wanted to control me. I found out about my dad's will by accident when I visited my old nanny. She had been with me during all the tough times and knew everything but never said anything. Then I had an argument with my stepdad and started looking for the lawyer who had the will. That's when things started going really wrong. I started getting threatening calls, telling me to leave town. At first, I didn't take them too seriously, but a week later, I was kidnapped by some bad guys. They kept me locked up in an old cabin in the woods, hitting me and trying to make me say the will wasn't real. Luckily, I managed to escape. One of the guys left, and when they took me out to go to the bathroom, I saw my chance to fight back. I don't really remember exactly how I got away, but I ran as fast as I could. I hid in a hole covered with leaves and stayed there for a whole day. Eventually, I got out and wandered until I found the road. And that's where you found me. Now I'm sure who was behind my kidnapping and who benefited from abandoning me, Amanda exclaimed, splashing her hands in frustration. It's obvious, Mitchell. Of course, it's your stepfather. Who else? We need to go straight to the police and sound the alarm. He won't stop until he gets rid of you. Mitchell responded vaguely, "You're right. But I'm confused why my stepfather didn't try to harm me when I was a kid. The will says if I can't inherit, everything goes to Mr. Long." Amanda suggested, "Maybe you got lucky. Your stepdad might not have known about the will until recently, but I'm sure he had something to do with your kidnapping. I saw the way he looked at you, cold, calculating, and evil." Amanda took Mitchell to the prosecutor's office, where he explained everything, and then they went to the police. Justice started moving, and a case was opened. After a thorough investigation, horrifying truths emerged. It turned out Mr. Long not only planned and paid for Mitchell's kidnapping, but also had a role in his father's murder. Mitchell couldn't believe it. He was trembling. He asked to meet his stepfather, wanting to look him in the eye and ask one question. He thought maybe his stepfather would apologize, facing a life sentence, but instead the scoundrel acted brazenly. "Well, Mitchell, are you satisfied now?" "Yes, I'm getting old. Feeling sentimental. I was weak. They didn't kill you right away in the forest. I tried to protect you. You were like a son to me." Mitchell choked with disbelief. "Like a son? How can you say that?" "You've been pretending to mourn my father, promising to find his killers, but you ordered his death. Because of you, my mom died soon after. You ruined my life. Why didn't you kill me earlier? Why did you pay for my education if you never loved me? I know you only tolerated me." The businessman grinned wickedly. "At first, I pitied you, so I sent you away to study. It also helped my reputation in high society to educate the son of my late partner. It kept suspicion away from me and I gained respect. But now, you've returned to ruin my plans. It was only when you mentioned the will recently that I panicked. I couldn't let you inherit everything so easily. I've worked hard for years to build this business, and now it's all supposed to go to you. No way." I thought of everything, planned everything. But you managed to escape from the cabin while I was still deciding whether to get rid of you immediately or later. And I would have succeeded if it weren't for that meddling cab driver. She ruined everything. Mitchell was furious. Don't you dare insult Amanda. She's amazing. She saved my life twice from you, Dad. You won't get away with this. You'll pay for everything. Mr. Long leaned forward and hissed angrily. You're very wrong, kid. I have connections and resources. I'll be out of here soon enough. You'll see. But the court delivered justice, and the businessman was sentenced to life in prison for his crimes. Instead of a luxurious life, a jail cell awaited him. In court, he shouted about how much he hated Amanda, blaming her for everything. She had stopped him from getting even richer and had saved his stepson, whom he didn't even care for. Mitchell took charge of the company and threw himself into his work. He and Amanda became close friends, often spending time together. Mitchell secretly harbored feelings for Amanda. He admired everything about her contagious laughter, her unique features, and her kind eyes. However, Mitchell couldn't confess his feelings because Amanda was pregnant with another man's child and preparing for childbirth. He feared that confessing now would only hurt her and ruin their close friendship. So instead, Mitchell chose to take care of her and support her in every way he could. He insisted that Amanda move out of her old, cramped housing, and he rented a comfortable apartment for her. He also encouraged her to stop working as a taxi driver since her pregnancy was becoming noticeable, and her employer wouldn't provide maternity leave or might even fire her. Mitchell provided financial assistance to Amanda and made sure she had everything she needed. Amanda felt overwhelmed by his kindness. Mitchell, you're spoiling me too much. No one has ever cared for me like this. Thank you so much. It's a shame I had to quit driving. I really loved that job. Sitting at home all day is boring. Quietly, Mitchell replied, looking into her eyes. Amanda, this is the least I can do for you. You're not just a stranger to me anymore. In fact, you're the closest person to me now. Don't worry, soon you'll have your baby boy, and there won't be a dull moment. I'll be there to pick you up from the hospital. Will you let me be a godfather? Touched, Amanda replied softly, of course, why are you even asking? You know, Mitchell, I feel so safe and comfortable with you, more than with anyone else. Why didn't we meet earlier? It's a pity. But nothing can change that. Amanda's heart was also filled with love for Mitchell, but she didn't dare to entertain those feelings. She kept reminding herself, don't fantasize about him. Why would he want someone else's child? Don't ruin his life. But then, why does he care about me so much? Not every friend would do that. Is it just out of gratitude? I have to convince myself that he's just a friend, nothing more. We can never be anything more. Amanda was tormented by worries and doubts with no one to confide in. One day, while leaving the women's clinic, she bumped into Deborah, the nurse who had helped save Mitchell. Both women were delighted to see each other and decided to have lunch at a cafe and catch up. Pregnancy suits you, Deborah remarked with a laugh. You look radiant. So how did your detective story with the kidnapping end? I've thought about you often, Deborah began, her tone reflective. I almost got fired and received a scolding that seemed to last forever. I had to write a lengthy explanation letter, and they even revoked my bonus, but it was all worth it. You should have seen the doctor's face when he couldn't find his paying patient in the morning. What a commotion it caused. Eventually, an investigation started, and our corrupt doctor was finally removed from his position. He was terrified and tried to dodge the consequences, hoping everyone would keep quiet about his shady actions, but many people were fed up with him. He was sentenced and is now in jail. He deserves it. And guess what? I even got promoted to head nurse. Can you believe it? Amanda smiled warmly and congratulated her, saying, you deserve it. Then she added, I've thought about you often too. Sometimes, you just need someone to talk to, knowing they'll understand and listen without judgment. As for her pregnancy, Amanda confided in Deborah about her complicated relationship with her ex-boyfriend. Deborah shook her head in amazement. You're really something, my friend. I admire you. To be honest, you're incredibly brave. Taking risks for the sake of strangers, even while pregnant, it's admirable. Your Mitchell should be kissing your feet and taking my advice. Don't torture yourself. Don't doubt in vain, just trust your heart and fate. Everything will fall into place, believe me. Giving birth to a baby, loving them, and watching them grow is the greatest joy in life. If Mitchell truly loves you, he'll reveal his feelings sooner or later, and having a child won't be an obstacle. I made a mistake in my youth. I had a fight with my fiancé, and I hastily terminated my pregnancy without thinking. I carry that regret on my soul, and now at 37, I have neither children nor a husband. Do you know how many times I've regretted my decision? I could have raised a child and not felt so alone. You're a fighter, Amanda, and I admire you for it. Amanda took Deborah's hand gratefully and said, "Thank you for everything you've done for me. Please visit me often. I'd be happy to have you around. Honestly, I've never had a true friend before, but I trust you. I feel like you're a good person, so let's be friends," Deborah exclaimed with joy. "I'm all for it. I have Sunday off. How about we go for a walk and look for some interesting baby things, like fashionable strollers? We can have a chat." From that day on, Amanda and Deborah became inseparable. They had plenty to talk about and felt a deep connection, almost like sisters. When Amanda went into labor in the middle of the night, she didn't hesitate to call Deborah. "I'm sorry for waking you up, but I think it started. My belly hurts so much, and I feel tightness. I'm scared. What should I do?" Deborah immediately sprang into action, calming her down and organizing transportation for her. She instructed Amanda to get dressed, gather her essentials and documents, and wait for her. "Everything will be okay. Dr. Brewster is a great obstetrician, and I'll be there for you," she assured. Deborah also called Mitchell herself. "Wake up, Romeo. Your Juliet is giving birth. Let's go help." Within 30 minutes, Amanda was taken to the delivery room. Deborah and Mitchell anxiously waited in the corridor. Mitchell, feeling nervous, paced back and forth, bombarding Deborah with questions. "You're a medical professional. Tell me, will Amanda be okay? Why hasn't she given birth yet? Did something go wrong?" The nurse tried to cheer Mitchell up, pouring him some coffee and urging him to calm down. "You men are so impatient. This process can sometimes last up to 24 hours. Let me ask you, do you love her?" Mitchell, feeling embarrassed, answered honestly, "Yes, very much, more than anything. But I don't know what to do about it." Deborah chuckled. "You're funny. If you love her, what's there to think about? Get married and raise the boy with her. You two are so obvious. Don't hide in the corners pretending to be just friends." Excitedly, Mitchell asked, "Do you think she loves me too? I'm scared to tell her. I don't want to offend her. I can't sleep or eat. She's always on my mind." Deborah reassured him. "Yes, she does. Trust me. Be more decisive, Mitchell. We women are romantic. We always expect the first step from a man." Finally, a nurse emerged and announced, "Congratulations, Daddy, you have a big boy." Amanda gave birth without complications. Deborah winked at Mitchell, saying, "See? I told you everything would be fine. Go get some sleep, you lucky guy. I'll check on my friend as a medical professional. I'm allowed to." Amanda smiled blissfully as she held her baby close to her chest. The pain of labor seemed insignificant now as she looked at her son. The name Mark came to her mind effortlessly, regardless of who the father was. What mattered was that he was her own flesh and blood, and her life was forever changed, no longer just belonging to herself. Deborah entered the room quietly, kissing Amanda and congratulating her. "Look at him, frowning like an old man. Come on, smile." Amanda laughed and replied, "To be honest, it wasn't easy. The doctors were worried I couldn't do it on my own. But Mark and I pushed through, and now here he is, my little miracle." "Where's Mitchell? Did he go home?" Deborah chuckled and said, "I doubt he left. You should have seen how worried he was about you. He paced like a caged tiger, bombarding me with questions. He loves you, Amanda, that's for sure. I think he'll propose to you soon. Will I be your maid of honor?" Amanda's heart skipped a beat as she exclaimed, "You think so? I'm so grateful that both of you are here, that you both appeared in my life. I was pregnant and alone with only my neighbor's support." Deborah smiled and said, "I'll be happy to babysit the little serious baby. I know he'll grow fond of me." On the day of discharge, Mitchell arrived dressed in an expensive suit with a bouquet of flowers. Deborah had been with Amanda all morning, helping her get ready, teasing her and curling her hair with a curling iron. "Your Romeo is downstairs waiting impatiently," she teased. Confused, Amanda asked, "Deborah, what's all this? It feels like we're getting ready for a party. I'm just being discharged. Why all the fancy outfits?" The nurse chuckled and replied, "Who knows, who knows? One thing I can tell you is that you're in for a surprise." As Amanda stepped outside, Mitchell rushed to her while Deborah took little Mark in her arms. Mitchell took out a beautiful box from his pocket and opened it. "Dear Amanda, I congratulate you on the birth of your son. I want to put this ring on your finger as a symbol that we are more than friends now. I love you, darling, and I want you to become my wife. Will you marry me?" The nurses applauded, and the sound of a champagne bottle being opened filled the air. Even the elderly janitor paused his work to witness the scene. Overwhelmed with emotions, Amanda sobbed and whispered, "I agree, I love you too, and I can't help it." Deborah clapped her hands and shouted cheers as she raised a glass of champagne. She was genuinely happy that two loving hearts were finally united. Amanda moved into Mitchell's mansion, and the couple officially tied the knot. Mitchell adopted Mark, giving him his surname. 3 years passed. Amanda and Mitchell lived harmoniously, and Amanda deeply appreciated her husband's loyalty, devotion, generosity, and care. She never regretted marrying Mitchell. One February, amidst the cold frosts and snowstorms, Mitchell suddenly suggested, "Darling, why don't we go to a warm sea resort? What's stopping us? We'll soak up the sun." Amanda squealed with joy. "Of course, I'm in. I've never been abroad, but I'd love to. You're the best." Mark clapped his hands in excitement, and the packing began. The couple visited a travel agency to select a suitable tour. The receptionist, a friendly girl, greeted them warmly and offered them coffee. She mentioned that the manager, Stephen, would assist them. When Stephen approached them, Amanda greeted him but didn't immediately recognize him. Upon closer inspection, she realized he was her ex-boyfriend. Stephen hadn't made any career advancements and remained a manager just as he was before. Amanda decided to play along by pretending not to remember him. She coolly said, "My husband's son, and I would like to choose a family tour to the sea. What options do you have to offer?" Stephen was visibly flustered and unable to provide a proper response. Lost in his thoughts, he barely heard Mitchell's voice. Finally, Stephen blurted out, "Amanda, don't you recognize me? It's me, Stephen. Is this my son? What's his name?" Mitchell answered stiffly, "This is my son, Mark Lebman." "Any more questions?" Amanda calmly replied, "Don't get excited, my love. The man has made a mistake." Mitchell took his wife and son, and they left the agency. Stephen was shocked. Losing such clients and such a woman. Peggy had left him a long time ago, and he never made a career. Today, seeing Amanda so radiant and happy, he felt offended and angry with himself. Now his son called another man daddy, and what was he left with? Few were willing to marry a simple manager without prospects. Only Amanda had loved him so sincerely and devotedly. If only he could turn back time. Amanda and Mitchell went on vacation, enjoying the sun and water, and came back completely happy. A month later, they received another surprise. Amanda found out she was pregnant. Mitchell hugged and kissed her, rejoicing like a child. Amanda thought to herself, "If someone had told me that I would meet a man on the road, marry him, and have his child, I wouldn't have believed it. And now I'm the happiest I've ever been. That's fate." Soon, Amanda played matchmaker for her best friend, introducing her to Mitchell's friend and partner, Andrew. It was a great decision, as they had a passionate romance, and soon Deborah also became pregnant. Mitchell and Amanda joyfully shouted cheers at their best friend's wedding, wishing them happiness. The two couples often gathered for joint vacations, enjoying friendly and fun times together. To be loved is more valuable than being rich, and our heroes managed to achieve it.
I thought Mom had lots of money saved, but turns out she didn't. I told you, right? I think we should make her leave. Why keep someone who doesn't have a job here? I've been living here for 3 months, and my son and his wife used up all my money. They treated me like I was just here to clean up after them. I got tired of it all, so I left quietly. Then my son called me, sounding really worried. "Mom, what's happening?" Tommy asked urgently on the phone. Right around that time, something I did became big news all over the United States. My name is Sarah, and I'm 70 years old. I lived in France for a while, but then I got sick and had to come back to the United States. My old apartment was gone, so I asked my son Tommy and his wife if I could stay with them for a bit. Tommy is my only son, and he's 44 years old, working in an office. He and his wife Alice don't have any kids, and they seem to live quietly. We lost touch while I was away, but I decided to reconnect, and Tommy seemed happy to hear from me. I explained my situation and asked if I could stay for a bit. Tony reluctantly said yes. It felt awkward to ask, but the joy of being with my family again made me brave. Feeling a bit nervous but mostly happy, I took a taxi from the airport to their house. When I got there, Tony and Alice greeted me at the door. Tony seemed glad to see me, but Alice didn't look happy at all. I'm planning to stay here for a few months. My stuff will arrive later, I told them. I left my small bag and went to the living room. We talked about our lives, jobs, and my time in France. When Tommy asked why I moved to France, I just said, I'm getting old and wanted to enjoy living in the countryside there. Tommy chuckled, but Alice still seemed unhappy. Then we talked about my health issues. I've been feeling really dizzy and the doctors think it might be Meniere's disease. When it happens, everything seems to spin around me and I feel sick. I don't feel safe living alone, so I wanted to stay with them until I feel better. After our chat, I went back to the entrance to grab my things from my bag. As I was sorting out my stuff in the hallway, I heard Tony and Alice talking. Tommy, are you really okay with Mom staying here? I don't want to live with an old lady, Alice said. She's my mom, come on. Plus, you work part-time, so it's not like you'll always be here, Tony replied. Yeah, but what about her days off? How long is she going to stay? I want her gone, Alice insisted. Don't say that. Mom will leave eventually. Let's talk about money tomorrow. Just keep your voice down. She might hear you, Tony warned. She can't hear us. She's old. They say old age brings sharp ears for insults, Alice remarked. And there I was, listening to their talk in the chilly hallway. I feel bad for suddenly intruding on Tony and Alice's lives. I'm sure it's a big hassle for them. But I'm really happy to be spending time with them after all these years apart. When Tony was young, I raised him alone after my husband passed away. We didn't have much and Tony faced his own struggles with sickness and all. This doesn't make up for that, but I wanted to come here to share my apologies and gratitude. That's why I came to this house. It's a shame I'm not welcomed, but they have their own lives to lead. I went to the guest room they gave me, trying to calm my anxious heart. The next morning, Tony left for work, leaving just Alice and me. While I was doing some crafting in the living room, Alice came up to me. Hey Sarah, can you not make such a mess? I glanced around and saw fabric bits and threads everywhere. Oh sorry, I'll tidy up. Do you know what this is? I showed her the little pouch I was sewing with a cute turtle design. This is a turtle pouch. I love turtles, so I make crafts with them. It even has a zipper on its shell, I explained. That's nice, but Sarah, you can't just hang around here all day. Alice interrupted, clearly uninterested. At least go somewhere else when I'm not working. You're getting in the way. But I get dizzy if I go out too much, I said. I'll drag you to the community center nearby. You can stay there during the day. I have things to do at home, Alice said firmly, without room for discussion. And also help with the chores while you're here. You're not just here to relax. It's the least you can do since we're letting you stay, she added, leaving me surprised. So I finally said, okay, and got up slowly. From then on, I found myself doing all the housework, even though I felt dizzy and achy. I took on the chores that Alice and Tommy seemed to expect me to do, almost like I was their housekeeper. I noticed that Alice was always glued to her phone, maybe neglecting the housework before I arrived. That evening, when Tommy came home, he approached me with a smile and asked, Mom, did you bring your bank card? I looked at him over my reading glasses, nodded, and got up. I took out my bank card from the little pouch I made and handed it to Tommy. He quickly checked it, and his expression changed. Wait, Mom, is this all the money you have saved? Do you have any other accounts? He asked, his face tightening. That's all I have. I don't need much at my age, and I don't have any health problems, I said, smiling. But as the conversation went on, Tommy's expression grew darker. Wow, this isn't much money at all, not even $10,000. You said you were living well abroad, so I assumed. Tommy kept questioning me, asking if I had more money hidden away. When I said no, he sighed and seemed disappointed. Fine, I'll keep hold of this card for now. I'm doing you a favor by letting you stay here, so this is the least you can do. After Tommy got my account details, he took my bank and debit cards and left the room. That night, as I lay in bed, I could hear Tony sighing loudly through the wall that separated our rooms. Oh, what a disappointment. I thought Mom had a lot of money. But it turns out our finances are in bad shape because of her. I shouldn't have agreed to let her stay. We should kick her out. She's not bringing us any benefits, Tony complained. It seemed like both of them were pretty sure of themselves. They talked openly in the next room, almost as if they wanted me to hear. In my cold bed, I held back tears of loneliness and sadness. The next day, since Alice had the day off, she drove me to the local community center. I opened my bag to continue my crafting in the lounge area, but realized I had forgotten the fabric I needed at home. I hesitated but couldn't bring myself to ask Alice to go back and get it. Luckily, I wasn't feeling too dizzy that day. I knew the area, so I decided to take a walk back home to get the fabric. When I finally reached home, I peeked through the window and saw Alice with a man I didn't recognize. At first, I thought he might be a guest, but they seemed really close. I hesitated outside for a moment, then decided not to go in. It dawned on me that maybe they wanted me out so I wouldn't interrupt their affair. Back at the community center, I couldn't stop thinking about Alice and the man. I decided to call someone for advice. From then on, I avoided mentioning the situation and continued interacting with Tony and his wife. But whenever I left the house, I made sure to leave a red turtle pouch on the living room side table, just to let them know I was aware of what was going on. 3 months went by like this. I had been staying with Tony's family for a while now, essentially becoming their household maid. Whenever I was at home, I had to do endless chores. And when Alice was around, I was sent off to the community center. Most of my savings had been drained by Tommy, who had a gambling addiction and spent a lot of his time on lotteries and slot machines. His obsession with money seemed to stem from the financial struggles he faced as a child. I tried to talk to him about it at first, but it always made him angry. After 3 months of this, I couldn't take it anymore. One night before a long weekend, I decided to do something I had been thinking about. Tommy, Alice, I want to thank you for letting me stay with you. Tommy, I know things were tough for you when you were young because we didn't have much money. I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused, but I'm grateful. I took out a homemade turtle pouch from the table. It was green with a zipper on the shell. This is a token of my appreciation for both of you. I hope you'll accept it. To my surprise, neither Tony nor Alice showed any interest in my handmade gift. Mom, that's enough. Are we really out of money? Can't you think of some French account or something? Tony said. I've told you, we're out of money. Look, I put a lot of effort into making this. Can't you just accept it as a symbol of my love? Remember how happy you used to be when I would fill the shell with candy and a little pocket money? Tommy started getting more and more irritated. I'm not a kid anymore. I don't want something like this. Sarah, how much longer do you plan on depending on us? It's getting annoying, Tommy continued. Both Tommy and his wife gave me a cold look. Desperate, I tried to remind Tommy. Do you remember Joe? He helped us out in our old apartment. What? I don't remember. Stop bringing up old stories. Are we done? Shocked into silence, I held onto the turtle pouch tightly, feeling the texture of the paper inside. The next day, Tony and his wife went on vacation, leaving me behind. After our conversation the night before, I had decided it was time for me to leave as well. So I quickly packed my bag with the help of an arranged carrier and sent it off to my home in France. I made sure to include the red turtle pouch in my carry-on bag. Before leaving, I left a simple note on the table thanking them and saying goodbye, and then I left the house where I had been staying for 3 months. Instead of going straight home to France, I stayed in a hotel in the US for a while. I had things to take care of, and I figured Tony and his wife would contact me eventually. Sure enough, about 2 weeks later, Tony called me. Mom, what's going on? That turtle pouch, it's yours, right? I could hear Tony's frustration over the phone. Ah, you noticed. I wasn't surprised when I saw the news on TV. Inside the turtle-shaped pouch that I had planned to give to Tommy and his wife was a check for $1 million. It was my way of thanking them for all they had done for me and apologizing for any trouble I may have caused them in the past. Some people might think it's shallow to make amends with money, but I had been dreaming of the day when I could give it to them, saving up bit by bit over the course of 40 years. Before meeting Tony after a long time, I did some investigating and discovered that he was in debt. He had tried to pay off his gambling debts by gambling even more, only to find himself in even deeper trouble. Despite having a steady job, he was struggling. All I wanted was for him to clear his debts and leave peacefully, but when I offered to help, they refused to accept my gesture. It seemed like they had completely forgotten about the kindness they had shown to my family and me in the past. So I decided to divide the $1 million check into smaller sums and donate them to charities and welfare organizations across America. I put the donations in the same handmade turtle pouch and sent them anonymously. The turtle pouch became a sensation, making headlines and trending on social media. On social media, Alice's son commented, "Hey mom, isn't that the turtle pouch?" "Yeah, mate. So does that mean you were going to give us one filled with money too?" "Yes, exactly. That was my way of saying thank you and I'm sorry. I've been making both the pouch and saving the money to give to you." "Well, you could have told us. We would have accepted it. If you didn't want my feelings, then you don't need my money either." Tony's voice was filled with rage as he yelled on the phone, completely losing control. "That money belongs to me. How dare you trick me? Give it back." I couldn't bear to listen any longer, so I pulled the phone away from my ear. After a moment, I spoke up. "Okay, let's calm down. You're giving me a headache. There's one more turtle pouch left, and if you really want it, it's yours." After some time, Tony finally calmed down and repeated his request for the turtle pouch. We agreed to meet later at a cafe. On the appointed day, I brought the last red turtle pouch in an envelope to our meeting spot. Tony and his wife were already there and immediately demanded the money before I even had a chance to sit down. As I quietly took out the red turtle pouch, Tony grabbed it immediately and unzipped its shell. But inside wasn't a check. It was a small electronic device. "What's this?" Tony asked, puzzled as he examined the device. He found a button and pressed it, and a voice recording started playing. Alice, who was standing next to Tony, went pale as she heard her own voice talking affectionately with another man, someone who clearly wasn't Tommy. Confused and shocked, Alice tried to snatch the recording from Tony's hand, but he held onto it tightly. As they struggled, I opened the envelope I had brought and laid out several photos on the table. Pictures of Alice having an affair with another man in their home. Confronted with undeniable evidence, Alice became flustered and kept asking why. Tommy picked up each photo, studying them carefully. "Ever since I came to your house, something didn't feel right. A friend suggested I hire someone to investigate, and they even offered to cover the costs. What's wrong with you? Why would you do this?" Alice demanded. "You're my son's wife. It's heartbreaking to think that family would deceive each other. You'll understand when you're older. I suppose fate brought me here to uncover your infidelity." "Have you been lying to me all this time? Since when, Tommy?" Tony remained silent, and now it was Alice's turn to speak. "And what about you wasting all our money on gambling? I only spend what I earn, and you have your part-time jobs, so you should have some money saved up too." Listening to their argument, it became clear that this couple had been keeping their financial struggles hidden until now. Neither of them had any money left. "Alice, you were $40,000 in debt. You've been giving all your earnings to your affair partner. I had the investigator check your finances." Both Tony and Alice were shocked, and they started shouting at each other. I was stunned when I heard the results of the investigation. This couple was on the verge of bankruptcy. "Look, if we get Mom's money, we can pay back the debt. So give it to us now." I donated all the money. The only thing left is this red turtle figurine. He wasted my savings on gambling. "What? You're kidding me. All of it?" In a fit of anger, Tony lunged at me across the table. Other customers started to pay attention, and the staff rushed over. "The $1 million is mine. It was supposed to be mine. Give it back." Tony's rage escalated to the point where the police had to be called to restrain him. After some intervention from the officers, they kindly escorted me back to my hotel due to concerns about Tony's aggressive behavior. A week later, Tony and Alice's relationship had completely broken down due to the affair and financial troubles. They ended up getting divorced. Tony, now single, became even more engrossed in gambling, accumulating more debt. He was caught attempting to embezzle company funds, which led to him being fired. His outburst at the cafe was captured on video and spread on social media, making it hard for him to find another job. Unable to bear the shame, Tony cut off all contact and disappeared. After the divorce, Alice had nobody to turn to and moved into a rundown public housing unit, living alone. Just as I was about to make a donation for turtle rescue, an online post I made joking about my own turtle went viral. Alice began facing harassment and stalking, which eventually affected her part-time job and resulted in her being fired. Even the man she was having an affair with grew tired of her and left. Now, with no source of income, she relies on temporary assistance for needy families to survive. After returning to my home in France and finishing unpacking in my apartment, I changed into a dress with ease. As I reviewed some work documents, I heard a noise at the entrance. It seemed Joe, my roommate, had returned home. "Hey, Madam President, welcome back. How was your trip to America?" Joe greeted me with a smile as he set down his coat and bags. Joe is 75 years old and was a resident in the same apartment complex where my son Tommy and I lived years ago. During that difficult time, I was struggling with poverty after losing my husband and caring for a young Tony who had asthma. We had no utilities, and with no one to turn to, I felt desperate and considered giving up. It was Joe and his wife, our upstairs neighbors, who saved us. They became our lifelines. Please call me Sarah. I'm back, and look, I brought back many souvenirs. Wow, all my favorites. Thanks, I'll take some to the storytelling event at the community center tomorrow. Joe examined each of the souvenirs piled up on the table, his face glowing with happiness. After we had gotten back on our feet, Joe and his wife moved away for work. Years later, we ran into each other in the city, and I started helping with a support program for the needy that Joe had founded. By then, Joe's wife had passed away, and we became business and life partners. I've been leading the organization since Joe retired a few years ago. What began as a small initiative between Joe and myself has blossomed into a large-scale international organization over the past 30 years. Currently, our main focus is on supporting single mothers and their children. A few years back, we relocated to France to study their advanced support systems. Although we've gained recognition in France, we're still relatively unknown in America. I'm planning to expand our activities there soon and wanted to spend some quality time with Tony and his family before they found out about my work. In the end, I couldn't make them understand how I felt, but that's their decision to make. Even if it was only for a brief moment, I was grateful to have had the opportunity to spend time together as a family. Now, at the age of 70, I refuse to let my age define me. There's still so much I want and need to accomplish. As I straightened my back in my dress, I began to ponder the content of my upcoming international speech for tomorrow.
A big renovation project for taking care of older folks. It costs $30,000. But wait, what's happening? That's the house of my wife's parents, isn't it? A man on the phone claims to be married to my wife's estranged sister. The talk is all confusing, so it seems like my sister-in-law might be planning something. My name's Martha, and I'm 56 years old. I stay at home. My kids, a son and a daughter, are grown-ups now and don't live with us anymore. It's just me, my husband, and his parents living together. We all get along well, which is nice because I lost my own parents when I was young. My husband and I were supposed to live with his parents when we got married. But my mother-in-law, who had a tough time with her own mother-in-law, had the house changed so we could have our own space. Even though we share the house, we each have our own private area. That's probably why we get along so well. My husband still works during the day, so I spend a lot of time with my in-laws. One day, while my father-in-law was busy on the farm, I was getting lunch ready in the kitchen. I planned for us to eat outside together. Then we got a call from one of my father-in-law's friends on the farm, saying he fell and hurt himself. They rushed him to the family doctor in a truck. My mother-in-law and I left the food and hurried to the hospital. When we got to the hospital, they were rushing my father-in-law into emergency surgery. Despite seeming healthy, he was in his 80s, and recovering from a fracture would be tough at his age. The doctors warned us that he might need a wheelchair afterwards. But I was determined. As long as he's alive, that's what matters. I'll be there to support him, I said. We waited nervously while he was in surgery, hoping for the best. By the time my husband finished work and joined us, the surgery was over. We were relieved to see my father-in-law sleeping peacefully in his hospital room, without any major complications. We decided to stick together and support him through his recovery. But sadly, our hopes were dashed when my father-in-law passed away suddenly a month later. His age had made him vulnerable, and he caught an infection after the surgery. Since many of his friends and relatives were also elderly, we didn't want to upset them by spreading the news of his passing. So, after discussing it, we opted for a small family funeral. But even that didn't solve all our problems. What about my sister-in-law? I asked my mother-in-law and husband. They didn't look happy, probably remembering her troubled marriage. My in-laws weren't happy about my sister-in-law's marriage. They strongly opposed it. While my husband wasn't as against it, he wasn't thrilled either. This created tension between them, and their relationship became distant. But she was still their daughter, so shouldn't she be allowed to attend the funeral? They agreed that if we could find her, she could come. But we couldn't reach her, so the funeral went ahead without her. It's just how things are with her. It's fate. Don't worry about it, Martha, my mother-in-law told me as we returned home from the crematorium with my father-in-law's ashes. My father-in-law's sudden death caught us all off guard. We weren't prepared for it mentally. We rushed through the funeral and cremation. We held his ashes, lit incense, and spent the next few days feeling lost. It's easier when my husband is here. We can talk and support each other. But when he's at work, I can't bear being alone in the quiet house, so I go to my mother-in-law's room. I know my mother-in-law is going through even more pain and sadness than I am. After all, she lost her husband suddenly, someone she had been with for so many years. So even though it's hard, I try to act cheerful around her. But my mother-in-law was more accepting of the situation. I thought I'd be in this state for the next 49 days, but yes, we can go through his things later. But I'm already over 80, my mother-in-law said. You look so young for your age, mother-in-law, I replied. Not being sick often, she'd mentioned that the only time she was ever in the hospital was when she gave birth. Basically, she was telling us that she's healthy and we don't need to worry about her. You're so kind, Martha, but while I can still move around, I want to go through our things, including his, she said. I get it. It's important to keep those memories safe, like my father-in-law's belongings, I replied. Got it. Just tell me if you need any help, I offered. She asked me right away to help her reach things that were too high for her. As we looked at old photos of my father-in-law, my mother-in-law happily talked about their younger days, sharing stories about their trips and adventures. I listened closely, nodding along. The phone rang, breaking the quiet of the room. Since my mother-in-law doesn't use a smartphone, the landline is her main way of communicating. I wonder who's calling. Only a few people usually call, and they're all close friends who know what's been going on, I thought. It could be important. I'll get it, I said, realizing it would be easier for me to answer than for my mother-in-law, who had been mentioning how hard it was getting for her to move around. I quickly answered the phone by the entrance, and a man I didn't recognize greeted me politely. He said he was my sister-in-law's husband, but I'd never met him before, so I wasn't sure if he was really who he claimed to be. As I listened, I started to wonder if this was some kind of scam targeting older people. Then he said, I want to talk to you about the home renovation for caregiving. But my father-in-law had already passed away. Why was he bringing up caregiving renovations now? Did he get the wrong house? No, my mother-in-law didn't need that level of care. Excuse me, but are you sure you have the right house? I asked cautiously. The man claiming to be my sister-in-law's husband mentioned her maiden name, which matched my husband's family. So there was no mistake that this was their family home. Plus, the name matched my sister-in-law's. It's true that the woman you mentioned is my husband's sister. Thank you for believing me. With all the trouble our marriage has caused, I was worried I had made a bad impression again, the man said. I wasn't sure why my in-laws were so against my sister-in-law's marriage, but I didn't get a bad impression from this man at all. In fact, he seemed very humble and sincere. My brother-in-law explained that he heard the caregiving renovation would cost around $30,000. He felt bad for any trouble he may have caused and wanted to make up for it. He planned to pay the $30,000, but couldn't get the money ready by the deadline. He called to ask if we could possibly wait and extend the payment deadline. It's awkward to let him explain everything before saying this, but since he spoke with such passion, I failed to convey the truth, I thought to myself. Thanks for being polite. Now, about the extension, Just hold on a sec, I said, then turned to my mother-in-law. When did you find out about the changes to caregiving? I asked her. My father-in-law was really healthy and was working on the farm until recently, she said. So you didn't need any caregiving help at all? I double-checked. No, not at all. Wait, are you talking about the past? She realized. Yes, my father-in-law died. We buried him and cremated him recently, I told him. I understand. Well, I could imagine him getting flustered on the phone. He must be confused because of what his wife told him and what actually happened. I had planned to stay like this until the 49th day, but yes, we can go through his things later. But you know, mother-in-law, I'm already over 80. You seem much younger than 80, mother-in-law. She rarely got sick. She'd mentioned that the only time she went to the hospital was to give birth. Basically, she was saying she's healthy and we don't need to worry about her. You're thoughtful, Martha, but as long as I can still move around, I want to organize my stuff, and his too. I get it. I don't want anyone else going through my father-in-law's things and memories either. Got it. Just tell me if you need a hand, I said. She quickly asked me to assist her in reaching things that were too high for her. While we were sorting through old photos of my father-in-law, my mother-in-law joyfully recalled memories of their younger years, recounting tales of their travels and adventures. I listened closely, nodding in agreement when the landline rang. Since my mother-in-law doesn't have a smartphone, the landline is her primary way of communicating. I wonder who that could be, I remarked. There were only a few people who usually called, and they were all close friends who knew our situation. I thought they might avoid calling if they knew, but it could be an emergency. I decided to answer it. It was better for me to move rather than make my mother-in-law, who had been mentioning how hard it was to sit and stand, get up. So I quickly picked up the phone near the entrance. A man's voice I didn't recognize greeted me. He introduced himself as my sister-in-law's husband, speaking very politely. However, I had never met him before. I wasn't sure if he really was who he claimed to be. As I listened, wondering if this was some new scam targeting elderly people, he said, I want to talk to you about the home renovation for caregiving. My father-in-law had already passed away. Why was he bringing up caregiving renovations now? Did he mistake my mother-in-law for someone else? No, she didn't need that level of care. Excuse me, but are you sure you have the right house? I asked. This is my wife's family home, right? The man claiming to be my sister-in-law's husband mentioned her maiden name. It did match my husband's family, and there was no doubt this was their home. Plus, the name matched my sister-in-law's. It's true that the woman you mentioned is my husband's sister. Thank goodness. Thank you for believing me. With all the trouble our marriage has caused, I was worried I had made a bad impression again. I don't understand why my in-laws were so against my sister-in-law's marriage, but I don't feel any negativity towards this man. In fact, he seems really humble and sincere. According to my brother-in-law, he heard that the cost of caregiving renovations would be around $30,000. He wants to do his best to make up for any inconvenience he may have caused. He shared all this with me, seeming genuinely honest. I asked him how the story about my father-in-law needing care came up. He brought it up a few years back. At first, he seemed to be sending a fixed amount every month to help with caregiving expenses. But it was clear that neither my father-in-law nor mother-in-law had heard anything about it. If they had known, my mother-in-law would have invited him to the funeral, he explained. Her mother was thankful and said it helped, so I thought maybe I was slowly being forgiven. But if she was forgiving you, wouldn't she have talked to you about it? I questioned. That's right. What's more, the amount of money he sent each year kept going up. He was sending more money every month, thinking we had requested extra help. But we didn't remember asking for anything like that. So none of that money actually reached you? I asked. When I confirmed, I could imagine him getting really upset. It was difficult for me to share this information as well. As I listened, I started to wonder if my sister-in-law. I can't say for sure if you're being scammed, but I hesitated. You don't have to sugarcoat it. I am being scammed, right? He interrupted. I couldn't outright confirm or deny it, so I stayed silent. He probably took my silence as confirmation. What should I do? He asked. Even though it wasn't really my place to answer, assuming he was indeed being scammed, I couldn't just leave my sister-in-law, my husband's sister, alone, despite our strained relationship. I told him we'd talk about it and get back to him later, and that was the end of the call. When I went back to my mother-in-law, she remarked, "That was a long call. Was it a persistent salesperson? You should just hang up on those." No, it was a man claiming to be my sister-in-law's husband, I replied. I then told my mother-in-law about the conversation. She was shaking with anger as she listened, and her fury only intensified afterward. What kind of person is she, using her father as an excuse to ask her husband for money? She exclaimed. It seemed that my sister-in-law had a history of being irresponsible with money, buying expensive things she couldn't afford with her allowance or earnings from part-time jobs. Her behavior seemed very suspicious. When she wanted to marry, her partner was a man with a significantly high income and a lot of pre-existing wealth, which made her parents strongly against the marriage. Their opposition wasn't for my sister-in-law's sake, but because of her partner. Afterward, we decided to wait at the house of the person responsible, along with her husband, for her to come back home. I couldn't recall the last time I saw my sister-in-law. When she decided to date her then boyfriend with marriage in mind, she introduced him to her parents and brother. There was some uproar about her marriage, but since I wasn't yet part of the family, I didn't attend. So this would be my first meeting with my sister-in-law's husband. From what I gathered over the phone, he seemed sincere and pleasant. I had heard he earned well, but he didn't seem to live extravagantly. It seemed he was trying to live modestly. However, if one of the reasons for this was my sister-in-law's deception, it must be a mix of complicated emotions, meeting my sister-in-law again after many years. My sister-in-law, who never expected her mother to be at her home, was so surprised that her eyes widened as she stood frozen. The impression I had of my sister-in-law was of someone who liked flashy things, but the sister-in-law in front of me was excessively flashy and lacked any sense of style, which was hard to watch. The three of us had agreed beforehand to go along with my sister-in-law's story. Initially, we decided not to bring up the fact that she was lying. It's been a while. I'm glad to see you're doing well, I said kindly. When my sister-in-law was suddenly spoken to with kindness, she stammered in response to her mother. She probably thought her lies had been found out and that she was going to be scolded, but she seemed confused by the unexpected kindness. I wanted to see your face after all this time. Have you been doing well? Her mother continued. We didn't tell her the truth about her father's passing and kept up the pretense that he was still alive. I also apologized for not staying in touch and gave a suitable greeting. My sister-in-law humbly said she was glad her mother seemed well and that she had been worried about her. However, she didn't mention her father. It would be awful if the conversation turned to him, and the topic of caregiving expenses slipped out of my husband's mouth. It seemed my husband and she had met before, but it seemed her lies hadn't been exposed. She probably thought she could get away with it and not get caught. Your mom looks happy. It seems you two are getting along well as a couple, my mother-in-law said happily. She hoped my sister-in-law would have a change of heart and start repaying her husband bit by bit. The idea was to shower her with praise in hopes of encouraging her to change her behavior. Somehow, my sister-in-law got carried away and told my mother-in-law that she would support her if she ever needed caregiving, even saying not to worry about money. It's surprising she could say such things in front of her husband, who had been supporting her out of goodwill, I thought. We expressed our gratitude and left that day. My sister-in-law was acting strange, asking for a lot of money. We suspected she was using it for herself. We didn't know where all the $30,000 went, so we hired a private investigator to check her money situation. The money meant for taking care of someone each month was actually being used by her for herself. But it turned out she was also spending a lot of money on a guy she really liked at a club, trying to make him the best. She was spending too much, buying expensive things and getting into debt she couldn't pay back. The guy she liked owed a lot of money to, around $30,000. When my sister-in-law's husband found out, he got really mad. He decided he couldn't ignore it anymore. He made plans while she was away with the guy she liked, not knowing anything about what was going on. My sister-in-law came back home after a few days and found that her house was totally empty. There wasn't any furniture or anything belonging to her left. She started to panic and tried to call her husband, but he didn't pick up. So she called me instead. At first, she was really upset, but when I mentioned her trip with the guy she liked, she suddenly became quiet. She didn't ask how I knew about it because then she would have to admit what she did. Now it was my turn to tell her everything without giving her a chance to argue back. I can't believe you thought you could get away with this and took advantage of everyone. You betrayed your mother, your husband, and now it's hard to see anyone wanting to help you. I told her firmly. I also mentioned that the excuse she used about her father-in-law wasn't valid anymore because he had passed away. I understood she didn't know about his death, but it was still wrong to use her father's situation to ask for money. I let her know that her ex-husband also found out the truth, and feeling abandoned, she screamed like a mad person over the phone. Her ex-husband didn't want to talk to her, and to avoid troubling my elderly mother-in-law any further, I offered to be the middle person between them and my sister-in-law. She kept causing a scene over the phone. It was kind of sad to see her like this, not even realizing her father had passed away and still using him as an excuse. She might feel sorry for it later, but it's too late now. I gave her one final message. Your ex-husband plans to ask for all the money back that you gave to the guy at the club. You'll have to find a way to pay off the $30,000 debt on your own. Later, she got legal documents from a lawyer. She wanted to talk to her husband about it, but he refused. He was really angry and didn't want anything to do with his ex-wife, even for legal stuff. Without any agreement, my sister-in-law had to live on a tight budget and work hard. She couldn't afford to spend money at the club anymore, and the guy she liked stopped paying attention to her, leaving her with just the big debt she owed. Sometimes scary debt collectors would come around. My sister-in-law was naturally scared, always worrying about the lawyer's letters and the debt collectors showing up. As for the rest of us, we went back to our normal lives. It took a while to go through my father-in-law's things, but we decided to move on as a family, including his part. Recently, my mother-in-law has been getting weaker, and I think she might need care soon. Since we couldn't help my father-in-law, my husband, and I agreed to do our best for my mother-in-law. Even if you attempt to trouble us, there's hardly any loss on your part, considering it's your funds, useless to poor people with lowly lineage. I sighed as I completed the final check. You're closing your account, right? Please, go ahead, I said with a tone that seemed mocking. Their eyes, filled with clear disdain, made me feel disgusted as they stared at us. I decided it was time to give those who judge others by their upbringing a taste of their own medicine. With that thought, I smiled. My name is Tiffany, a 29-year-old office worker. Currently, I'm living a peaceful life with my mom while working. My dad passed away from an illness when I was young. His chronic illness had worsened early. My father, who was involved in various businesses, was always busy with work, out early and back late. Even so, he treasured his family time, and I have fond memories of playing with him on his days off. Mom and I were initially shocked by Dad's death, but Mom, not wanting me to feel lonely, cherished our time together. Fortunately, when Dad fell ill, he made sure with the former CEO to secure enough funds for our livelihood. Thanks to that, I was able to go to college, and both Dad's and Mom's parents were very supportive. Especially my paternal grandparents, who lived nearby, took great care of me when Mom was away at work. We still go back to both sets of grandparents for holidays like Christmas and spend time together. I am who I am today thanks to the support of many people. To give back, I went to a national university, and got a job at a major company. I thought about working at the bank my dad was supposed to inherit, but I chose a career I loved. As you're being told, do what you love. I've already handed the bank over, don't worry about it. Thanks to a fulfilling home environment and the freedom to dive into hobbies, I had no interest in romance. But now, at a mature age, many of my friends are married with kids. This led me to think about marriage, and that's when a certain encounter happened. I never imagined this meeting would lead to a major incident. Hey, Tiffany, aren't you interested in love, huh? That was the starting point. A question from a colleague at work. We've been close since our rookie days. I have an acquaintance who's struggling to find a match. He's well-educated and handsome. You're highly educated too, Tiffany. Maybe you'd like to meet him. I've always thought it's a waste for someone as eloquent as you, Tiffany. There are even a few people in the office who are after you. She has a wide network and always shares various stories. She's living with her boyfriend, whom she met at a party, and seems very happy. She's quite concerned about my lack of romantic involvement. I had even consulted her about marriage, leading to this arrangement. A few days later, I agreed to meet a man named Is. The rendezvous was at a cafe, and as I waited nervously, a man approached me. Tiffany? Ah, yes, nice to meet you. You're Is, right? I said, feeling a bit anxious. Yes, thank you for today. Yosef's expression was blank as he looked me over. It felt like he was sizing me up, and I was a bit taken aback. Then, taking a seat opposite me, he quickly started the conversation. What do you do for work, Tiffany? He inquired. I work in sales at a company. I've always enjoyed interacting with people and making use of my opinions, which is why I chose sales. I find it fulfilling, and I love the moments when customers are happy with their purchases. I replied, trying to ease the tension. What's the name of your company? He asked. I told him the name of my company. Upon hearing it, Is paused for a moment, then smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile, more like one of satisfaction. My company is quite a large enterprise with good performance. We're well trusted by our customers, he said, his tone slightly arrogant. Since he asked, I decided to return the question. What do you do, Yes? At my question, Is snorted with pride and began to boast. I work at Sunrise Bank as a department head. Sunrise Bank is a really big bank, The work is tough, not something ordinary people can handle. But since my dad is the CEO and I'm the successor, it's different for me. I felt a stir in my chest at Yosef's words. I was expecting a normal response, but Yosef's aggressively toned words made me feel uncomfortable. Indeed, Sunrise Bank is a major bank. I knew about Sunrise Bank due to a certain incident, but I was surprised to learn that Is worked there as a department head. Wow, that's impressive. Sunrise Bank is a big place, isn't it? I flattered Is on purpose. I saw no need to be rude, and though I thought this would probably be our last meeting, I figured it was better to be nice. Pleased with my flattery, Is continued to boast about himself. Honestly, talking to him was painful. He did listen to me occasionally, but always turned the conversation back to himself, even making outrageous comments about his lack of romantic prospects. I'm quite popular, but it's always people who don't match my family background or education level that come to me. I thought the problem might be his attitude, but I had already decided not to meet him again after informing my friend. As time passed, he still looked satisfied and made a suggestion. I'd really like to meet your parents, huh? But we just met today. That's exactly why parents' excellence is important, especially if we're going to date, right? Inside, I screamed. I had no intention of dating him, but he seemed oblivious to my discomfort and kept pushing forward. When are your parents in? Are you available? I'll have to discuss it with my mom. What about your dad? As Is pressed on, I felt a growing sense of disgust, but couldn't find the strength to cut him off. My dad passed away when I was young. At my words, Is narrowed his eyes. Suddenly, waiting for him to speak, Is just said, I see, and fell silent, pondering. Well, send me a date that works for you later. I'll adjust my schedule. No, thank you. Should we leave then? Before I could finish, Yis stood up. It felt like talking to someone from a different world, despite my reluctance. I had given him my contact information and even discussed meeting our parents. His disdainful look upon hearing about my father's absence bothered me. In the end, we agreed to meet again with our parents. When I explained this to Mom, she smiled. Riley, maybe you were just nervous because you haven't dated before, she said reassuringly. Maybe, but the way he spoke was weird. Well, his parents will be there, right? Just say no if it doesn't feel right. I'll be there too, I replied, feeling guilty. Thanks, Mom. Sorry for dragging you into this, I apologized. Mom laughed heartily. It's okay. No need for you to feel bad. Besides, I'm curious about Sunrise Bank, so let's see how it goes. So, Yis and I arranged a family meeting. At that time, I had no idea Yis had planned the meeting for such a shocking purpose. On the day of the meeting, we arrived at the place Yis had chosen. It was a fancy restaurant. It's a big place, isn't it? I remarked as we entered. Yes, it is, Mom agreed. Inside, our table was ready, but Yis hadn't arrived yet. We entered and waited, and shortly after the scheduled time, Yis and his family arrived. Sorry we're late. The traffic was terrible. Nice to meet you. Thank you for today. Yosef's family unapologetically took their seats. Irritated but not wanting to start a fight, I initiated the family meeting. After some time, Yosef's mom, Morgan, with a sly smile, spoke up. So, where is your father? Is he coming later? Huh? She inquired, looking around. I looked at Yis, but he just smirked dismissively and said nothing. I had already told him my dad was deceased. Morgan acted as if she didn't know, despite having agreed to meet our families. Mom quickly responded. In my stead, my husband passed away from illness when Tiffany was young. So today, I'm here as her mother, Mom responded with a calm smile. In contrast, Morgan raised her voice in an exaggerated manner. Oh my, Tiffany is from a single-parent family. Her words took me aback. Even after explaining that my father had passed away from illness, her tone clearly carried malice. Being from a single-parent family, life must be quite hard, huh? But she graduated from a public university. That's commendable, right? Really, but still, being from a single-parent family, wouldn't dating her be complicated? His family's conversation left Mom and me utterly dumbfounded. Despite being present, they spoke so disrespectfully, mocking us as if being from a single-parent family was something bad. Such words weren't suitable for a first meeting. Angered, I retorted in a low voice, Excuse me, but after Dad passed away, Mom raised me with great care. I owe my current life to her. And isn't it rude to speak about someone like that when you've just met, Tiffany? However, Morgan burst out laughing at my words. Rude, isn't it? More absurd for the daughter of a single parent to think about marrying into a high-class family. I'm not really into strong-willed women. This is pointless. There's no getting through to them. Thinking this, I just stared at them in disbelief. I had high hopes since she works at a major company. Well, you'll eventually carry on Sunrise Bank, so maybe she's not quite at your level. As they hurled more insults, I felt no need to listen anymore. Trembling with anger, Mom glared at them. Did you invite us here today just to look down on us? I've heard from Tiffany about the other day. You're enjoying berating us for being a single-parent family, aren't you? Her words took me aback. Even after explaining that my father had passed away from illness, her tone clearly carried malice. Being from a single-parent family, life must be quite hard, huh? But she graduated from a public university. That's commendable, right? Really, but still, being from a single-parent family, wouldn't dating her be complicated? His family's conversation left Mom and me utterly dumbfounded. Despite being present, they spoke so disrespectfully, mocking us as if being from a single-parent family was something bad. Such words weren't suitable for a first meeting. Angered, I retorted in a low voice, Excuse me, but after Dad passed away, Mom raised me with great care. I owe my current life to her. And isn't it rude to speak about someone like that when you just met, Tiffany? However, Morgan burst out laughing at my words. Rude, isn't it? More absurd for the daughter of a single parent to think about marrying into a high-class family. I'm not really into strong-willed women. This is pointless. There's no getting through to them. Thinking this, I just stared at them in disbelief. I had high hopes since she works at a major company. Well, you'll eventually carry on Sunrise Bank. So maybe she's not quite at your level. As they hurled more insults, I felt no need to listen anymore. Trembling with anger, Mom glared at them. Did you invite us here today just to look down on us? I've heard from Tiffany about the other day. You're enjoying berating us for being a single-parent family, aren't you? It was the first time I heard her speak so sternly. Please stop with the accusations. It was just a little teasing, right? No one feels good being mocked, and all your remarks are condescending. We have no intention of listening to this any further. E's family looked displeased at Mom's clear statement. Presumptuous for commoners, huh? Indeed, that may be the case. But this has made up my mind. E's family looked briefly surprised at Mom's words, then burst into laughter. They seemed to be thinking, what can you possibly do? Mom sighed and began to speak. Actually, we have funds deposited with your bank, but we don't wish to entrust them to people like you. Oh, really? But we don't know your name, so it can't be much, right? It's probably insignificant. That's right. Even if you try to trouble us with your fun, it won't really affect us. Low-class poor people are not needed. I realized that even Mom's last attempt at reconciliation was in vain. But they continued to speak disdainfully, unaware. I sighed and made the final confirmation. We're closing our account. Okay, go ahead. Yosef's family responded with mocking tones and clearly disdainful expressions as they looked at us. I thought to myself, let's make those who judge others by their background suffer a bit. I smiled at the thought. Is that so? Then we will proceed as such. And please consider this meeting never happened, Yosef's family declared. Of course, I replied calmly, knowing we had no intention of marrying into a family with such prejudices. Well then, we will take our leave now, Mom, and I stood up. Oh, don't worry about today's bill. It's too expensive for you, they remarked. Is that so? Well then, with that, our family meeting ended. Later, I made a phone call. Weeks later, my mobile phone was flooded with calls from Yes. Of course, I had anticipated this and had no intention of answering. It was their own responsibility. I immediately blocked the number. A few days later, I received a call from Grandpa Kyle. Summoned by Kyle, Mom and I headed to Sunrise Bank in the meeting room. Ye's family, looking pale, was present. As soon as they saw us, Morgan stood up and rushed over to bow deeply. I am extremely sorry for what happened, she said. I didn't reply to Morgan's words, just smiled and began to speak. What exactly are you apologizing for? At my words, Morgan bit her lip hard, trembling with anger. That's understandable. There are too many things for which they should apologize. That's probably why she's feeling so frustrated. This whole situation started because I said we would close our account. That day, our account wasn't particularly large. Closing it wouldn't have caused much damage. But Kyle's case was different. Kyle managed the inheritance left by my dad at Sunrise Bank for our benefit. Kyle also had his own account there. If all accounts, including Kyle's and my dad's inheritance, were closed, it would total about $7,000 million. In other words, their disrespect decided the closure. And importantly, Kyle is the former CEO of the bank. Dad was supposed to take over the bank but passed away young, so the position went to Scott. I didn't know that Tiffany was related to the former CEO, Scott. Looking anxious, Yosef pleaded as if making an excuse. But that's no excuse. Even if they didn't know, their prejudice against our family is their own fault. You mean, if we were relatives, you would have treated us differently? Dad interjected. Hey, don't talk to Dad like that. It's your fault for not telling us from the start that your grandpa was the former CEO. I don't have any obligation to tell a stranger like you that. Besides, you were the one who started it and made fun of us, remember? I countered. causing Yosef to narrow his eyes in frustration. You insulted me knowing I was from a single-parent family. When I said I would transfer the bank due to insecurity, you told us to go ahead. We just did as we were told. But it's just that it may be just that for you. But have you ever thought about the feelings of someone whose family has been insulted? Silence fell. Morgan was trembling, looking hopeless, and Scott was hanging his head. But Yosef still seemed unconvinced, his face full of dissatisfaction. Getting all high and mighty just because people talk to you. Yosef remains unrepentant. At that moment, the door to the conference room opened and Kyle appeared. Seeing Kyle, Yosef's tone grew defiant, and Morgan turned even paler. Frozen in place, only Yosef glared at me. Even after giving you a chance to reflect, you're still only thinking about yourselves, Kyle said, his tone stern. It's not my fault. It's her. Watch your words. If you continue, you'll end up even more miserable. Yosef, silenced by Kyle's words, glared at me again. Then, as if resigned, he burst out, "No way. Who would think a single parent's relative was the former CEO? You knew I was the future CEO and came to the family meeting just to mock us." "Yosef, be quiet." Kyle glared sternly, causing Yosef to breathe heavily. "Future CEO, huh?" Kyle then turned his gaze to Scott, who shrunk even more under Kyle's stare. "I understand wanting to leave the bank to your son, but now that I know his mindset, it's impossible for him to continue as CEO." "That's ridiculous," Scott started to retort, but sat down again under Kyle's gaze. "You still don't understand that your attitude is the problem. Though I'm retired, the board will decide. If you have something to say it to them. Remember, we recorded the previous conversation, and this one. Don't forget that the voice recorder will serve as evidence." I took out a voice recorder in front of the three and pressed play. The recorder started playing back our conversation from the other day. "How dare you prepare something like that?" "It's unfair," Yosef exclaimed. "It was just a precaution, but remember, you forced me into this situation," I countered. Yosef had nothing to say in return, and their faces turned pale. "Thank you, we'll handle it from here," they said. So Mom and I left. Ultimately, Kyle didn't transfer the funds, at least not officially. Scott was removed from his CEO position, and Yosef was demoted. Seemingly unable to handle the blow to his pride, Yosef resigned voluntarily. Kyle's influence in the financial industry meant Yosef would struggle to find work in the same field again. Whether Scott knew this or not, he seemed determined to work until retirement, but Kyle said it would be tough for him both mentally and physically. Morgan, who used to wield power as the CEO's wife, apparently started part-time work to maintain her lifestyle. But her character likely made it hard for her to keep a job. "I'm really sorry," I said. "It's okay. You didn't know, right?" Mom replied. "I only shared what happened with a friend who introduced me to Yosef. She just heard about him through someone else and wasn't at fault." Mom was initially concerned about being a single parent, but I'm happy now and can live thanks to the support I've received. When I told her that, she smiled and said thank you. After everything was taken care of, Kyle told us to come over to his house again sometime. I'm really grateful for Kyle's help in resolving the situation. He was tough, but I'm happy now, so it's okay. "I have some good news for you," Mom said one day. "Really? It's not about dating again, is it?" I teased. "It's a friend of my boyfriend this time. He's definitely a good guy. I'm not interested in dating right now, but I'm satisfied with my current life. I want to keep cherishing those who support me. And maybe someday I'll meet someone I really click with."
"I don't like anything about you, Mother," said my eldest son's wife. "We want to live with our family alone, so get out." I was shocked to hear these words. It reminded me of when I had to leave my own parents' home. Now, I felt angry at the idea of being kicked out of this house too. "Fine, I'll leave," I said, gathering my things to go. This was too much. I was determined never to forgive my eldest son's wife. It was time to put my plan into action. "So, my name is Sandra Clark, and I'm 61 years old this year. I'm technically retired, but I'm still lucky enough to have some work. I don't go to the office every day anymore. Sometimes I drop by and attend meetings, but mostly I work from home. My oldest son seems to think I'm not working anymore, which isn't true. I became a widow when I was in my 40s. Right now, I live with my oldest son and his wife. Our family home has been in our family for a long time. It's a bit old and needs some fixing up, but I've always loved it. That's why leaving was hard. I've never had to worry much about money. My late husband's insurance money is still mostly untouched. I've been able to live comfortably without worrying about my future. Even though it might seem like I have an easy life, there are some things that bother me. It's mostly my oldest son's wife, Jessica. She's strong-willed and we often clash. This tension didn't just start recently. It goes back to when she first told us they were getting married. I still remember the outfit she wore when she first came to meet us. She showed up in a tracksuit that looked like something she wore back in high school. She said she wanted to be real with us, but I couldn't help but find it a bit odd. It's not exactly lying, but it felt like she was trying too hard to prove something. She's also very argumentative and smart, which can be challenging. I couldn't understand why my oldest son chose her as his partner. Later, I found out that Jessica was the one who pursued him. She's bold, I'll give her that, and she's attractive too. I think my son, who's a bit naive and sheltered, fell for her charm. Even after they decided to marry, things didn't change much. To put it nicely, she's straightforward. To be blunt, sometimes she lacks common sense in how she acts. I really wanted to object to their marriage, but I reminded myself that it's what my son wanted, so I kept my peace. And now, we're facing the consequences of that decision. After my son and Jessica got married, he insisted that we all live together in our family home. I thought Jessica might disagree, but she was actually okay with the idea. It didn't take long for me to understand why. However, once we started living together, Jessica never lifted a finger to help with household chores. She left everything for me to do, cleaning, laundry, cooking, despite being a full-time housewife herself. She had quit her job when they got married. Even though I work remotely and don't have to go to the office every day, I still have less free time than Jessica. While I'm working on my computer, Jessica would make comments belittling my work, saying I'm just goofing off. At first, I brushed it off to avoid arguments, but it bothered me more and more as it kept happening. Jessica, since you have some free time, could you help out with the cleaning? I asked, noticing her lounging and watching TV. She looked at me with disgust, sighed dramatically, and replied, I don't do housework for your own good, mother. Can't you see that? It's a shame you don't appreciate my consideration. She had this strange theory where she believed if she did the housework, it would be bad for my health. According to her, seniors need to stay active, and doing chores would make me sedentary and possibly lead to dementia. So she was actually doing me a favor by letting me handle everything. Her reasoning was so bizarre it gave me a headache. Then she said something even more shocking. I agreed to live together to keep you from slacking off, mother. She said it with a half smile, leaving me speechless. I regretted agreeing to live together more and more every day. Doing all the housework while being watched by Jessica was nothing but torture. Fed up with the situation, I decided to talk to my eldest son, but it wasn't to complain about Jessica. I decided to move to an apartment where I could live alone. The current house we're in is old and has many stairs, which became difficult for me after I hurt my back last year. I talked to my son about the challenges of living here, and then I moved to an apartment. Even though it felt like Jessica pushed me out, I don't regret leaving. The new apartment is a rental. It might be a bit big for just me, but I got a room big enough for my grandchildren to stay in the future. I had the inside designed just the way I like it, and it felt like my own little castle. But my happiness didn't last long because Jessica started coming over every day and staying until late. The new apartment is really nice, huh? Maybe too big for you, Mom? Jessica said, lounging on the couch. Why don't you come back to your old home and do the chores? It's for your health and longevity. It's unbelievable that Jessica is telling me to go back to the old house and do the chores. During the day, she's so self-centered, it's overwhelming. I've already moved out. You need to take responsibility as the wife. I handle all the chores here, and my health checkups are always fine, Jessica. You don't need to worry about me. But Jessica just turned away, ignoring my words. Ignoring anything inconvenient was her usual tactic. Yet, she kept coming to my apartment every day. Just recently, she said it's too much trouble to go back home and ended up spending the night. My parents' house and this apartment are only about a 15-minute walk apart. It was my eldest son who suggested I live closer to my parents' house because he was concerned. His concern made me a little sad to leave the old house. One day, after I had been out for work-related errands, I came back in the evening to a surprise. To my shock, Jessica had let herself into my apartment. It seemed she used the spare key I had given to my son without my knowledge. Welcome back, she said, lying on the floor in front of the TV without even bothering to get up. Jessica, that spare key is for emergencies only, not for you to come in whenever I'm not home. I felt uneasy knowing she had been in my apartment while I was away. It was the first time I firmly told her so. She seemed surprised, as I usually let things slide quickly. She gave me an annoyed look, but I stood my ground. You really are a difficult mother-in-law. I can't stand that about you. Jessica started yelling at me. I can't stand anything about you, not even this apartment. We're a family, so you should leave. With that, she tried to push me out the door. It seemed Jessica couldn't bear the idea of me living in the apartment. She was upset that they were still in the old house while I was here, calling it unfair. James is paying the rent for this place, right? It wouldn't be strange for us, his family, to live here. That's what it means to live beyond your means. Jessica seemed to think my son was covering the rent for the apartment. This explained why she kept showing up here. In her mind, the apartment should have been for her family to live in. Fine, I'll leave, I said firmly, staring her down. I agreed to move out within 3 days, which seemed to surprise her. Right in front of her, I called a moving company and arranged for them to come in 2 days. As Jessica left feeling satisfied, I watched her go, already planning my next move. True to my word, I moved out. My new place was an apartment specifically designed for seniors. I decided to test it out for 2 weeks. I handed over the keys and lease documents to Jessica, asking for a change in the contract through the real estate agent to the landlord. Luckily, I've known the landlord for a long time, so they were flexible and accommodating, which was a relief. My eldest son was furious with Jessica for kicking me out. He's even considering divorce, but Jessica doesn't seem to care. In fact, she started living alone in my apartment, saying, "Well then, let's live separately." I'm amazed at how bold she is. But in 5 days, Jessica will find out the truth. While I was working from home, my phone started ringing incessantly. It was Jessica calling. I had been expecting this, so I had a recorder ready to record the conversation. I pressed the record button and answered the call. "Excuse me, Mother, what's the deal with the rent for this apartment? Why do I have to pay it?" Jessica started ranting as soon as I picked up the phone. She sounded flustered. "Well, Jessica, you're the current leaseholder, so it's only fair that you pay. Is there a problem?" I purposely kept my tone calm and relaxed to annoy Jessica. She seemed even more agitated but didn't back down. "But didn't James used to pay the rent here? We're not even divorced yet, so shouldn't James pay?" Jessica had told my eldest son about the rent issue and he advised her to call me. The truth was, my son had never paid the rent. In fact, I had been financially supporting him. After retiring, I continued working as a consultant and advisor, earning a good salary. I was actually earning more than my son. I had been secretly helping him out because Jessica tended to spend a lot. "It's just a misunderstanding, Jessica. Originally, I was the one paying the rent for that place. I never made James pay a dime." Jessica seemed shocked and caught off guard by the truth. She quickly said what she wanted to and hung up the phone. Right away, I contacted my eldest son and played him the recorded conversation. "I've been putting up with it too, but I can't take it anymore. You feel the same way, don't you?" I knew my son was exhausted from dealing with Jessica's debts. No matter how old he gets, as a parent, I can't help but want to help him out. Some might say I'm too soft, but I think it's just natural as a parent. My son replied quietly, "I'll divorce her, I'm tired too." Then follow my lead. I told him my plan and gave him instructions. First, I asked him to take a few days of paid leave starting today. Then, I told him to quietly move out his important belongings without letting Jessica know. We didn't want her to notice any moving trucks, as she might be nearby. I had instructed him to slowly move his things out during the night, keeping it discreet. The important belongings were taken to a single-family home that I had found as our new residence. This way, the plan progressed without Jessica knowing. 3 days later, Jessica called again, sounding even more flustered than before. "What? Why are you so worked up? Just like last time." I kept my tone deliberately relaxed as Jessica sounded overly anxious, almost in a state of panic. "Mother, our house is up for sale. and I got a call from my parents saying that my belongings have arrived at their house. What does that mean? Jessica explained that her parents had received her belongings, and our old house was now on the market. It seemed my eldest son had followed my instructions. He had sent Jessica's things to her parents' house and put our old house up for sale, leaving it empty. The landlord told me that if I can't pay the rent, I should leave. I thought I should consult with James, and when I got home, there were chains and a padlock on the gate, and I couldn't get in. There's even a for sale sign up. Jessica was almost hysterical. It must have been quite a shock for her to come home to. I've already entered into a sales contract with a realtor. We can't access that house anymore, Jessica had began, ready to express all the pent-up frustration. Firstly, I'm no longer your mother-in-law, right? Yesterday, James should have filed for divorce. You signed it, didn't you? You and I are strangers now. Yesterday, my eldest son had filed for divorce at the city office. It turns out Jessica had signed the papers a while ago. Threatening divorce seemed to be a tactic she often used. My son used to believe that Jessica would change someday. After all, she was the person he loved enough to marry. He felt trapped into giving in to her threats of divorce, he once told me. But it seems my son has finally realized the truth. He signed the divorce papers, which had always been used as leverage, and submitted them. The divorce has been officially processed. You always used to tell James that you could divorce anytime. Are you happy now that things have turned out your way, Jessica? I could sense Jessica holding her breath on the other end of the phone. She wanted to argue back but seemed lost for words. She must have been feeling frustrated. Besides, I'm worried about you. After the divorce, how will you manage to live in that apartment without a job? Moving also costs money, and it's tough. How did you even afford it? Jessica's anger was no longer hidden. She yelled and cursed at me. She had claimed she married my son because of the inheritance he received from my late husband. However, I control all the inheritance and she can't touch a penny of it. Despite marrying to clear debts, she screamed that nothing was going well for her. Of course, I made sure my son listened to this conversation too. If it came to a divorce settlement, I planned to use the recording as evidence. I thought it was the end, so I patiently waited for Jessica to finish her tantrum. She ranted for about 15 minutes without pause. Then, in the end, she started begging me for help, crying. She confessed that she had been disowned by her family. With nowhere else to go, she pleaded for my assistance. It suddenly clicked for me. Something had felt off at the wedding, and now I understood what it was. Jessica had no place to go, no home to return to. Despite feeling a bit sorry for her, I couldn't ignore the consequences of her actions. Apologizing now won't change anything. We're strangers now. There's nothing more to discuss. Good luck with your life from here on, I said before ending the call with Jessica. I felt a sense of relief afterward. It seems Jessica caused trouble at my eldest son's workplace. He told me things escalated to the point of involving the police when he returned home. Jessica, who had been staying at the apartment without paying rent, had her keys changed by the landlord while she was out. Now, she can't even get into her own apartment. She might have tried to contact me or my son, but we had canceled our phones and got new ones with new numbers. I can only imagine the despair she felt when she realized she couldn't reach us no matter how many times she tried. We didn't give her our new address either, so she can't reach us that way. After causing a scene at my son's company, she was issued a restraining order. With no other options, it seems Jessica turned to her disowned family for help. However, when she returned home, she was met with a shocking sight. The luggage I had sent to her family's house was left out in the rain in the backyard, and she wasn't even allowed inside the house. It's likely that the unpaid rent for the apartment had been billed to her parents, adding to their anger. I heard rumors that she's currently staying in an apartment provided by an organization that supports homeless people. Without the ability to spend as she did before, she seemed stressed when I passed her on the street. I was stunned to see how much her hair had turned white and how dry her skin looked. She had changed so much. I hardly recognized Jessica at first. It made me realize just how much a change in living conditions can affect a person. I've started a new life in the house I bought with my late husband's inheritance. It's a duplex, so my son can remarry whenever he wants. For now, he joins me for dinner, but otherwise, he takes care of his own things. I've found that this distance works well for us. The money from selling my parents' home is safe for future needs. I plan to use it for my son and his future wife when they marry. And of course, I'll keep some aside for any future grandchildren. I'm thinking of creating the English garden I've always dreamed of in my new home. On days when I'm not working, I spend time in the garden, caring for the young trees and herbs. This new life, filled with hope, has become my daily routine.
Isabella, a renowned designer known for her creation of simple yet elegant dresses for affluent women, dedicated all her time and energy to her craft. At 35, she resided alone in a spacious studio apartment, furnished with only a comfortable bed and a small table where she enjoyed her morning coffee. The majority of the space was dominated by a large table holding fabric samples and her beloved sewing machine, a faithful companion in her solitary journey. Her social life took a backseat due to a flood of clothing orders from prestigious brands. Having never formed a family, Isabella once came close to marriage, but fate had other plans. She sighed, setting aside a folder of fabric samples in her attic studio, located in an elite district. The windows remained uncovered, allowing ample daylight to filter in. Isabella rose, tying the belt of her crisp white silk robe, and approached the window. The evening city below sparkled with golden lights, and farther away, the bay gleamed with lanterns along the main promenade. Evenings brought a stark awareness of her loneliness, unlike the busy days filled with creativity and work. The glittering city beneath made her feel like an invisible comet traversing a desolate cosmic space. Isabella sighed again, shifting her gaze from the distant city to her reflection in the glass. Her dark curly locks framed her face, and round reading glasses suited her well. Bright blue eyes, inherited from her mother, showed barely noticeable crow's feet. Isabella still possessed the beauty of her youth, often surprising others who assumed she was no older than 28. However, she believed such compliments were mere flattery. Looking into her own eyes, Isabella saw the echo of years spent in solitude, feeling akin to an ancient crone. Initially, she fought against this feeling, attempting to combat loneliness by donning a long black dress and wandering among brightly lit expensive storefronts or dropping into noisy bars. There, she would order lemonade, immersing herself in the music that once brought joy when shared with Javier, her fiancé. Memories of Javier's lively face and chestnut eyes filled with love haunted her, yet she rebuffed attempts by others to introduce themselves during her outings. Eventually, the walks became unbearable, leading Isabella to abandon evening excursions altogether. Instead, she immersed herself in her work, watched black and white movies, read, or doodled in her sketchbook until the late hours. Isabella ran her hand through her hair, pushing away memories. Turning from the window, she glanced at the wall clock. A gift from designer Hugo Martinez, its black and white dial showing 10 minutes to 10. Another call was imminent. The unraveling of Isabella's story began 7 years prior, a few months after her failed wedding. Suffering from the sudden disappearance of Javier, her fiancé, on their wedding day, Isabella mourned deeply. Taken in by her sister Mercedes and her husband, Isabella spent days staring blankly at the floral pattern on the wallpaper in a small room under the roof. It was in that room, as night approached and darkness enveloped her, that something peculiar occurred. Her unlit room became a canvas for disjointed images from the past. Memories of laughter, discussions of dreams, and promises of love flooded her mind. She vividly recalled the first date, walks in the park, and evenings by the fireplace. The room echoed with the chime of the old family clock striking 10, coinciding with the illumination of the room by a cold bluish-white light. Her mobile screen lit up with an incoming call from an unknown number ending in 49, the same numbers associated with the house on San Martin Street, where she and Javier had planned to build a life together. A tear rolled down Isabella's cheek as the call ended, only to be followed by the same numbers lighting up once more. Intrigued and somewhat apprehensive, Isabella answered the persistent call, her heart pounding. Yet the only response she received was a haunting silence. The next evening, precisely at 10 o'clock, the routine repeated itself. A call arrived from a different number, yet the enigmatic digits 49 persisted. Pressing the answer button, Isabella faced the familiar silence on the other end. Faint, intermittent breathing seemed to linger in the background, but certainty eluded her. Like clockwork, every day at 10 o'clock, the unknown number would grace her mobile screen, delivering nothing but ringing silence. Despite confiding in her sister about the mysterious calls and being advised to involve the police, Isabella hesitated. A peculiar sense of comfort and hope accompanied these daily occurrences, inexplicably soothing her. 7 years had passed, yet Isabella continued to anticipate the call with the digits 49, as if the universe communicated with her in this cryptic manner. Today, precisely at 10 o'clock, the phone rang once more. Holding it to her ear, Isabella immersed herself in the symbolic silence for a moment. "Good night to you too," she whispered to herself, ending the call. As she prepared to place the phone on the bedside table, it vibrated again in her hand. This time, a familiar number graced the screen. Hugo's name. They had collaborated on a collection 5 years ago, and he had gifted her the watch. Aware of Hugo's long-standing affection, Isabella had maintained a strictly professional relationship. "It's odd that he's calling so late," Isabella mused as she answered. "Hello, darling, how are you?" Hugo's friendly voice greeted her. "Hugo, it's me." "I'm fine. Why are you calling at this hour?" Isabella inquired. "No worries, not asking you out on a date." Hugo chuckled, putting Isabella at ease. It was always challenging for her to decline Hugo's invitations, but she valued their friendship. "Just hear me out," Hugo urged. "My manager called. We've been invited to a major business conference in the capital. Everyone will be there, understand. A golden opportunity to showcase our new collections, attract prestigious clients, and break into the international market." Isabella. The weight of the moment left Isabella momentarily speechless. "I don't even know what to say," she stammered. "What if I can't handle it?" A dissatisfied grumble emanated from the other end. "How can you not handle it? You're a pro. Where else would we find someone like you? You'll ace the collection presentation. I have complete faith in you," Hugo reassured, eliciting a grateful smile from Isabella. Hugo always knew how to support her. "But how did you manage to arrange this?" she asked, curious. For Hugo Martinez, nothing is impossible, he chuckled, affirming his unwavering confidence. With wishes for a good night, Hugo hung up, leaving Isabella lying in bed, her mind buzzing with excitement. She had dreamed of European recognition for so long, but never did she expect Hugo to make it a reality. The subsequent weeks were a flurry of preparation. The collection, still in the sketch stage at the time of Hugo's call, demanded swift action, finding fabric samples, making purchases, and crafting the models. By early May, everything stood ready, with only the final polish needed for the presentation aimed at captivating wealthy compatriots and European businessmen. Hugo emailed the tickets, prompting Isabella to contemplate her attire for the conference. Opting for strict tones with a touch of boldness, she sought to make a memorable impression. Why not wear a hat? Hugo's suggestion resonated over the phone, instantly sparking an image in Isabella's mind. Isabella settled on a light-fitting trouser suit, strategically concealing a slightly protruding belly. Underneath, she wore a thin meshed turtleneck, and atop her head sat a huge pink hat, complemented by matching candy-colored shoes. Hugo gave his approval, dressed in a mint-colored shirt accentuating his bronze tan, light trousers, and the vest. "We definitely won't go unnoticed." Hugo chuckled over the phone, and Isabella concurred. Their hour-long flight had them seated apart. Hugo dozed off, while Isabella reviewed the presentation materials, her nervousness palpable with sweaty palms. Much hung in the balance, her future prospects, and the realization of a long-standing dream. The woman couldn't fathom the significance this business meeting would hold for her. The prior evening, precisely at 10 p.m., the mysterious call had come again. In a moment of unexpected spontaneity, Isabella had declared, "Tomorrow, my dream will come true." Silence lingered on the other end, yet Isabella sensed a silent sigh. Before landing, she managed a brief 10-minute nap, accompanied by a peculiar dream, Walking down the street in a pink hat under bright sunshine, she suddenly remembered the impending conference. In a rush to call Hugo, she realized her phone was missing. Panic set in as a hurricane wind snatched her hat away, leaving her in despair as darkness descended, accompanied by the tolling of a bell -10 strikes. Upon awakening, Isabella found herself still in the grip of the vivid dream. Javier, her ex-fiancé, rarely visited her dreams, and this time he appeared as a tangible presence. The unsettling feeling lingered as the plane descended. Upon landing, Hugo's concern was evident. "You look so pale, Belle. Did you have a rough flight?" he asked. "I'm fine, Hugo. It'll pass soon," she reassured. Hugo handled their luggage, called a taxi, and took charge, allowing Isabella a moment to collect herself. Despite feeling unwell, she pressed on. Arriving at the hotel, Hugo assisted with check-in and accompanied her to her room, emphasizing the importance of a good night's rest. "Sleep, sleep, sleep," he encouraged. Isabella, still in the throes of her emotions, entered her room, showered, and nestled under the fluffy blanket. At 10 o'clock, the anticipated call never came. Isabella waited for minutes that stretched into half an hour. By midnight, tears flowed, the first time in years. "Where are you?" she whispered in despair. In the morning, a concerned Hugo woke her. "Belle, are you still asleep? The conference starts in 40 minutes. Isabella rushed to get ready, masking dark circles with foundation. The hat covered any hair mishaps. Descending to the lobby with presentation materials in hand, Hugo expressed relief. "Thank God you're on time, Belle. As always, just a little tired," he remarked. "I slept very poorly," Isabella explained. "I understand," Hugo empathized. "I've called the taxi." In the car, swiftly arriving at a skyscraper with blue windows, Hugo consulted notes. "The conference will be on the 13th floor," he muttered. "Conference room number 49. Isabella froze. Hugo disapproved but refrained from comment. Entering the hall, a diverse crowd had gathered, renowned designers, fashion connoisseurs, and entrepreneurs worldwide. Seated at the front, Isabella momentarily forgot her worries. She was about to address this prestigious audience. Isabella extracted the presentation script from her folder, attempting to immerse herself in it, pushing the lingering unease in her soul aside to focus on her speech. The hall gradually filled with new faces, but Isabella hardly noticed. She only looked up from the text once to confirm that the rail displaying samples of her collection adorned the stage. Bright green feathers on dresses and the golden shimmer of sequins on jackets instantly caught her eye. Tears welled up as she was transported 7 years back, to the day she wore a radiant golden dress on her way to marry Javier. Refusing the traditional white wedding dress, she opted for audacious gold, a bold choice for her hometown. But in that moment, all she could think about was Javier and the eagerness to become his wife. Hugo's gentle squeeze on her elbow snapped her out of the grip of memories. "Belle, you're next," he whispered, and Isabella nodded. Taking a deep breath, she heard her name amidst applause, stepped onto the low stage, and faced the sea of camera flashes. As Isabella composed herself, ready to begin her presentation, something disrupted her focus. Her heart pounded desperately, and her head spun. What was causing this sudden fluster? Scanning the audience once more, she locked eyes with someone familiar, intense brown eyes belonging to the dearest person in her life. Transported back 7 years, Isabella recalled the limousine's stop at the church, stepping out in her luxurious golden dress. Her sister adjusted her hair as they ascended the wide staircase. Her father blessed her, kissed her forehead, and the doors swung open. The hall, however, greeted her with confused and empty stares, devoid of smiles or joy. Descending the memory lane, Isabella remembered the funeral-like atmosphere, the distant cries, and the shock of learning Javier had gone missing. A week later, they discovered his bloated body in a lake. Isabella turned to designing dresses as a way to cope. Now, standing before 100 people, she felt the weight of her long-lost loved one's eyes on her. "Come on, Bill," Hugo whispered, urging her forward. Isabella took a deep breath, beginning her performance. Yet, despite her will, her gaze wandered. Among the audience, she spotted the man with the familiar eyes, part of a foreign delegation, his dark, wavy hair revealing a touch of gray. Caught in his gaze, the man stood up and headed for the exit. Panic surged through Isabella. Stumbling and swaying, she dropped the presentation sheet. A commotion ensued in the front row as Hugo rushed to the stage to assist. Isabella helplessly looked between him and the exiting man, fearing he would vanish before she could unravel the mystery of those familiar eyes. Hugo stepped onto the stage, his hand on Isabella's elbow. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. Isabella nodded, her throat dry. "Can you continue the presentation?" Hugo inquired, but Isabella's attention was fixed on the man by the exit, intent on leaving. "Wait!" Isabella shouted, rushing towards the exit. Ignoring Hugo's words, her pink hat fell to the floor, but she paid it no mind. The man reached the elevator, and Isabella followed, slipping inside just in time. "I must seem crazy, but you look so much like someone dear to me, someone who passed away 7 years ago," she explained, her voice barely audible. The man lifted his eyes, and Isabella's heart froze. It was Javier, or someone who looked exactly like him, his gaze filled with tenderness and love, tinged with guilt. "Bill, how I've missed you," the man whispered, embracing her tightly. Tears streaming down her face, Isabella clung to him. "Where have you been all this time? Why did you leave me?" she pleaded. "I'll tell you everything," Javier replied softly, running his hand through her hair. The elevator doors opened, and Javier led her to a waiting car around the corner. Isabella sat in the passenger seat, Javier behind the wheel, and they drove off. It felt surreal. Javier's hands on the wheel, the dark hair on his wrists. "I saw you in a dream on the plane," Isabella sighed, struggling to grasp the reality of the moment. "I saw you in a dream every day throughout all these years," Javier confessed quietly. Parking in a narrow alley, he turned to her. "Forgive me, Bill. I couldn't do otherwise," he said. As Isabella leaned forward, suspicion crept in, but Javier gently asked her not to interrupt. "I couldn't put you in danger, Bill, so I staged my own death," he confessed, causing Isabella to burst into tears. "How could you, Javier? How could you?" she asked. "I almost died of grief when I found out you had drowned. I almost went crazy. And all these years, why did you leave me for so long? Why didn't you get in touch? It would have been enough just to hear from you," Isabella questioned, her emotions pouring out. "All this time, I had to hide. You can't imagine how dangerous they are, Bill. Yes, I was afraid for myself, but most of all for you," Javier explained, his eyes reflecting the weight of his hidden struggles. "I called you every evening." Isabella was thunderstruck. "So it was you," she sighed, her heart flooding with mixed emotions. Javier gently stroked her cheek, his touch a balm to her soul. "I thought about you every minute of every hour of every day of mine. I missed you so much, my love." Isabella nestled against him, her voice filled with longing. "Me too. But why didn't you call yesterday?" she asked, puzzled by his absence. "I was on a plane," Javier simply replied, his eyes filled with warmth. "And I knew that tomorrow I would finally see you." Isabella moved away slightly, her gaze searching his eyes for answers. "But why did you leave all these years? I've been following your success. When I found out you were going to participate in the biggest business conference, I suggested to my company to become your investor. I really wanted your dream to come true. When you stepped onto the stage in your enchanting outfit, I almost went crazy with the desire to touch you. But I couldn't approach. I didn't want to ruin everything by disrupting your presentation. I never thought you would notice me in the audience. I was afraid of breaking your life again. You've come so far, become famous nationwide. There was no room for me in your life." Isabella shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "Career could never replace what I've lost. You've always been everything to me." "Oh, Belle," Javier uttered, salty drops rolling down his face, revealing the depth of his emotions. Isabella held him close, feeling his vulnerability, a familiar sensation stirring within her, a longing to care for him, to ease his burdens. What will become of us now? Isabella whispered, her voice trembling with uncertainty. I don't know. I'm free from them now, but it's not certain. In this business, you can never be 100% sure. I'm afraid it's still not safe for me. Isabella squeezed his hand, her heart heavy with worry. I don't care. Life without you doesn't make sense. Javier ran his hand thoughtfully through her hair, contemplating their future. Are you sure? He asked softly. Isabella nodded without hesitation. Javier sighed, pulling her closer, his touch reassuring and tender. Then he kissed her, a promise of a new beginning, and started the car, embarking on their journey together. From that moment on, they never parted ways.